She shouted, "Hold the elevator," and a hand came out of the dark to stop it. The cabin had no floor numbers. One slot for a key card. One button, unmarked. Savannah Reed is 33, a luxury wedding calligrapher and bespoke stationery designer, a black woman who built the studio Reed & Inc. on the wrong end of a Las Vegas boulevard. There is an eviction notice taped to her glass door, ink in the creases of her fingertips, a contract in her bag that forbids her to open the inner cards, photograph the paper, or ask who is getting married. $85,000. Not for the lettering, for the silence. Then lightning drops the cabin between floors. The man in the back of that elevator is Park Sing-jae, the Crimson Shadow, Korean Mafia boss of the Red Phoenix, owner of the Phoenix Crown Resort and Casino. Black suit, black shirt open at the throat. A phoenix inked down the right side of his neck, wings folded along the tendon, tail feathers vanishing under his collar. 50 minutes trapped, rain on her shoulders, a platinum watch on his wrist. Then the box slips, an envelope opens, and she is holding an invitation to his own wedding in 14 days, to a woman he never proposed to. When the doors finally open, 30 men are waiting on the other side. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Savannah Reed pressed the gold leaf onto the wet ink and counted to 8 before lifting her thumb. The letter held, 91 envelopes finished, 9 more before midnight, and after those, 200 waiting in flat boxes under the work table. The nib caught on the 92nd envelope and split a hair of ink across the R. She set the pen down. She turned the envelope once under the lamp, found the flaw, and dropped it in the bin by her knee. 91 then. The notice taped to the outside of the glass door had been there 11 days. It faced the street, so she read it backwards every time she raised her head. Notice to pay or quit. 10 days to cure. The 10th day had been Tuesday. She had scraped the tape twice with a blade and left it both times. Her phone buzzed face down on the stone slab where she mixed her inks. She turned it over with one knuckle. The bank again. She let it ring itself out and reloaded the nib. Reed & Inc. took up 1,100 square feet on the wrong end of a Las Vegas boulevard that tourists never walked. 2 long tables, a flat file with 31 drawers, a stone slab, a light box, and a wall of glass that faced the traffic. Her mother's phrase for that wall had been free advertising. Her mother had also never had a notice taped to it. At 11:40 she finished the 100th envelope of the night and laid it in the box with the others. She washed her hands at the utility sink until the water ran clear of black, then held them under the lamp. The ink stayed in the creases at her fingertips. It always did. She was drying her hands on a rag when the headlights swung across the glass. Calvin Ross parked across 2 spaces and came in shaking rain off his shoulders, satchel first, glasses fogged. He put a paper cup of coffee on her work table, on the clean side, and she moved it to the windowsill before she said hello. "You look like you've been up 2 nights, he said. 3. That's the spirit. He rubbed his glasses on his shirt. "I've got something. You said that in April. April was a wedding for a dentist." Calvin tapped the satchel. "This is not a dentist." She waited. She had learned to make Calvin fill silences, because he filled them with information. He filled it. 1,200 invitations, full suite, outer envelope, inner envelope, response card, hotel card, place cards for the dinner, hand-lettered, every one, gold. My client wants the actual metal, not the pigment. 1,200 is 9 weeks. You have 14 days. She laughed once, and it came out wrong, closer to a cough. No. Savannah, 14 days is 400 hours of nib work. There aren't 400 hours in 14 days. There are 336, Calvin said. I did check. She pulled the rag through her fingers and looked at the box of 100 envelopes she had just closed, then at the flat files, then, without meaning to, at the door. Calvin saw where her eyes went. He had the decency to take his glasses off while he said the number. 85,000, he said. Half on signature. Tonight, if you sign tonight. The rag stopped moving. For invitations. For silence, Calvin said. The lettering is what they're buying on paper. The silence is what they're paying for. He set the contract on the clean side of the table, squared it with 2 fingers, and stepped back like a man who had done this before and had learned to step back. Savannah read it standing. She read the way her mother had taught her, last page first, then the clauses with the shortest sentences, because short sentences in a contract were the ones with teeth. Clause 9 had teeth. The contractor shall not open, unseal, read, or reproduce the inner cards, which shall be delivered pre-printed and pre-sealed by the client's printer. Clause 10. No photograph, scan, digital capture, or archival copy of any component of the suite. Clause 11. The contractor shall make no inquiry, direct or indirect, as to the identity of the parties to be married. She read Clause 11 twice. You're kidding. I'm not. Calvin, I letter the names, that's the job. I put the names on the paper. You letter the guests' names, he said. The couple's names are already printed. Inside. Sealed. You never touch that card. Who prints inner cards before the calligrapher sees the suite? Someone with a printer. Someone hiding something. Calvin put his glasses back on, and behind the lenses his eyes did a small, restless thing. Someone rich, he said. Rich people hide everything. They hide their own birthdays. She turned to the second page. Delivery schedule. First 100 within 24 hours of signature. Delivery in person. Service entrance. Phoenix Crown Resort and Casino. Ballroom operations. No couriers. The Phoenix Crown. The client keeps a floor there. Which floor? Calvin spread his hands. Clause 11. Savannah walked the length of the table and came back. The rain had thickened on the glass, and the notice on the far side of it had started to blur, which was the first useful thing the weather had done all week. Who's the client, Calvin? Clause 11. You're not the couple. You're the planner. Somebody hired you. An office hired me, he said. A very polite office. Whose office? Savannah. He rubbed the side of his thumb across a knuckle. There were 3 paper cuts on that hand, healed and reopened, the way they always were on him. I have run Vow and Crown for 19 years. I have never once been told what to call my own client. That should tell you what you need to know about the money. It tells me you're scared. It tells me I'm employed. She picked up the contract again. On the margin of page 4, beside the payment schedule, Calvin had written himself a note in pencil and forgotten to erase it. Small, tight capitals leaning hard to the right. 2ND half-on final delivery. Confirm W/office. The pencil had bitten into the paper on the downstrokes and lifted almost off it on the returns. Savannah looked at those letters longer than the clause beside them. Handwriting was the only language she had never had to learn. Her mother used to cover a name on a wedding seating chart and make her guess the writer from the stems alone. You still press like you're angry at the paper, she said. Calvin snatched the page, saw the note, and rubbed at it with his thumb, which did nothing but smear graphite into the fiber. Sign or don't, he said. She thought about the number. 85,000 cleared 11 months of arrears, the second lien on the flat files, the loan she had taken against her mother's storage unit in June, and left enough to keep the lights on until spring. She thought about the boxes in that storage unit, which she had not opened in 4 years and could not afford to lose. She thought about Clause 11. I want a line added, she said. There's no adding. Then there's no signing. Calvin closed his eyes for a second. What line? If anything in this job is illegal, I walk and I keep the first half. He took a pen out of his satchel and wrote it in the margin himself, in those hard right-leaning capitals, and initialed it. CR. You'll be fine, he said. It's paper. It's the least dangerous thing in this city. She signed. Her signature came out steadier than her hands. He counted the deposit into an app on his phone, showed her the screen, and she watched the number arrive in her account with a sound like a small bell. 42,500. The first honest breath she had taken in 11 days went in and out without anyone seeing it. Calvin brought the material in from the car in 6 trips. Outer envelopes in ivory, heavy, laid and deckled, response cards, and 4 sealed cartons of inner cards, each carton banded in red tape, each band stamped over the seam with a wax medallion the size of a coin. Savannah crouched and looked at the wax. A bird, wings folded backward, tail feathers curling under. Pressed deep, clean edges, no bleed. Whoever cut that die had known what he was doing. Don't, Calvin said. I'm looking at a seal. Look at it from further away. 1,200 inner cards, she said, and I never see one of them. You never see one of them. What if the printer spelled a name wrong? Calvin was already at the door with his satchel on his shoulder. Then 1,200 people find out at the same time, he said, and it is not your problem, and that is the single best clause in that contract. It's the worst clause in that contract. It's the one that pays. He pulled his collar up. 24 hours, service entrance, don't send a kid with it. I don't have a kid to send. I don't have anyone to send. Then send yourself. He left at 1 a.m. She watched his taillights go and stood a while in the dark studio with her arms crossed, and then she turned on every lamp and started work, because the first 100 were due in 24 hours. She lettered until the sky went gray. She slept 90 minutes on the daybed by the flat files and woke with a nib-shaped crease in her cheek. She lettered again. At 6 that evening, she ran out of the ivory ink she used for the underlay and drove to the supply house on Rancho with the wipers on high, and when she came out with the bottle, the parking lot had turned into a river running toward the storm drain. The desert does not know how to hold rain. It never learns. She was back at the table by 7. At 10 she stopped, counted, and had 96. At 11:20 she had 102, and she took the 2 best out and put them aside, because 100 meant 100. She stacked them in the white presentation box Calvin had left, the one with the vow and crown foil on the lid, and closed it. Then she looked at the sealed cartons of inner cards on the floor. She looked at them for a long time. She picked up her coat. The rain came at the car sideways on the boulevard, and twice she felt the tires float. The Phoenix Crown rose out of the storm 4 blocks before she reached it, a black tower with a crown of light at the top that stayed lit through the water like it had been dared. She had driven past it 100 times. She had never once had a reason to go in. The service entrance on the north side was blocked by a delivery truck taking on water to the hubcaps. She circled twice. The rain stripped the shine off her coat and turned the shoulders black. On the third pass, a valet in a soaked jacket waved her toward the front and shouted something the wind took, and she took the ticket, took the box, and ran. The lobby swallowed the storm in one breath. Marble, warm air, a wall of gold light, and a hush so complete that her heels announced her 3 times before she reached the desk. Water ran off her hem onto the floor. She held the white box against her chest with both arms and asked for ballroom operations. The woman at the desk said the service corridor was flooded and that she should take the east elevators to 9 and ask for Ms. Vance. East is where? The woman pointed past a bank of columns. Savannah went. Her coat was heavy now, and the caramel portfolio under her left arm had gone dark at the corner. Around the columns there was a short hall, quieter, carpeted, with 2 brushed steel doors at the end, and no queue in front of them. The right-hand door was closing. Hold the elevator. A hand came out and stopped it. She got in sideways, box first, and the doors shut behind her with a sound like a held breath. The cabin was small. Dark wood, 1 mirror, 1 brass rail. She stepped clear of the doors, said thank you, pushed her hair back off her cheek, and turned to the panel. There were no floor numbers on it. 1 slot for a keycard, 1 button, unmarked, nothing else. 9, she said, please, ballroom operations. This car does not go to 9. The voice came from behind her left shoulder, low, unhurried, an accent that had been sanded but not erased. Savannah turned around. The man filling the back of the cabin was very tall, in a black suit with a black shirt open at the throat, and the throat was where her eyes stopped, because the black ink started under his right ear and came down the tendon in folded wings, the tail feathers curling toward the collarbone and vanishing under the fabric. She had spent the last 24 hours looking at that bird pressed into red wax. Her arms tightened on the box. Which floors does it go to? Mine, he said. Then I'll get out. He reached past her, unhurried, and pressed the unmarked button, and the car began to descend. Then the tower went dark. The drop was short, and it was not a fall, but the cabin dropped, and Savannah's feet left the floor for a fraction of a second, and the box went one way and her body went the other. A hand closed on her waist and held. The other hand caught the brass rail. The emergency light came on above them, thin and amber, and the car stopped. She was against his forearm. She got her heels under her, stepped back, and put a foot of air between them. Let go? He had already let go. He was looking at the ceiling. Somewhere far above them, the cables sang once and went quiet. Between floors, he said. How far between? 22 and 21. She laughed, and again it came out wrong. You know that from the sound? I know the building. He took a phone from his jacket, looked at the screen, and put it back. Then he crossed to the panel, lifted a brass plate she had taken for decoration, and spoke 3 sentences in Korean into the handset behind it. He listened. He said one more word. He closed the plate. The storm took the substation, he said. The generator holds the doors, the lights, and the phones. Not the drive. Meaning what? Meaning we wait for a crew to come down the shaft. How long? 40 minutes. Perhaps an hour. Savannah crouched and gathered the box. The lid had come off. Ivory envelopes had gone across the carpet like a spilled deck, and she picked them up one at a time by the edges, because the ink was 96 hours old on some of them, and hand oil would sit in the gold forever. He crouched too and reached for one. Don't touch them, she said. His hand stopped an inch above the envelope. He withdrew it and stood. Water, he said, after a moment. What? Your coat. There's water coming off it onto your work. She looked down. There was. She got the last envelopes into the box, put the lid on, and set it on the floor against the wall. Then she stood in the amber light with her arms crossed and rain running off her hem, and she did not intend to take her coat off in a locked elevator with a stranger. He took his own jacket off instead, folded it once, and laid it on the rail beside her. You're cold, he said. I'm fine. You are welcome to it. Or not. He moved to the far side of the cabin, sat down on his heels with his back against the wood, and rested his forearms on his knees. Then he looked at the floor and stopped speaking entirely. 11 minutes went by. She used 4 of them being angry and the rest being cold. Then she picked the jacket off the rail and put it around her shoulders, and it was heavy and warm and smelled faintly of cedar, and she hated how much better it was. Thank you, she said. He nodded without looking up. You always sit on the floor of your own elevator? Standing makes people nervous when they cannot leave. That was so exactly true that she had nothing to put after it. She sat down eventually, on the opposite side, with the box between her ankles. The amber bulb hummed. Somewhere overhead, the shaft made a long metallic complaint and settled. There's a fan, she said. In the ceiling. It's running. It runs on the generator. So we're not going to suffocate. You are going to be bored, he said. That is the whole danger. She adjusted the box with the side of her shoe until it sat square against the wall. 96 hours of nib work inside a cardboard lid. She checked the corner where the water had gone dark and pressed it flat with her thumb. What's in the box? He asked. Wedding invitations. Something moved in his face and stopped there. For a wedding here? Ballroom operations, floor 9. That's all I know and all I'm allowed to know. Allowed. Contract. He turned his head then and looked at her directly for the first time, and the amber light caught the edge of the phoenix on his neck. Whose wedding? I can't tell you. You cannot, or you do not know. Both. He stood, he crossed the cabin, and she got up too, fast, because she was not going to be sitting when he was standing. May I see the box? No. It is my hotel. It's my work. 22 floors of this building are my residence, he said. The wedding you are carrying is being held in my ballroom, and I have signed no contract with any planner this year. Then you should talk to the planner. Give me his name. No. They stood 4 feet apart in a stopped elevator, and neither of them moved, and the only sound was the water dripping off her coat onto the carpet. Then he stepped back. He sat down again on his heels, and after a moment, so did she. 35 more minutes went by that way. At minute 50, the cabin jerked once, 6 inches, and stopped. The box tipped. It went over on its side, and the lid came free, and a slab of envelopes slid out across the carpet toward him, and one of them, one that she had sealed that morning with the client's wax and set aside because the fold had been imperfect, split along its wet flap and opened. The inner card came halfway out. She got to it in 2 seconds. He got to it in 1. He did not pick it up. He turned it with one finger so the printed face came up into the light, and then he stopped moving so completely that she heard her own pulse. Savannah read it upside down, which she could do faster than most people read right way up. Together with their families, Park Seung-jae and Yoon-hae Rin request the honor of your presence at the celebration of their marriage. Saturday, the 26th, Phoenix Crown Resort, Las Vegas. The bird was pressed into the corner in red wax. 14 days, she said. He did not answer. That's the 26th. That's 14 days. He picked the card up then, and his hand was steady, and that steadiness was somehow worse than shaking would have been. Park Seung-jae, he said. You know him? I have been him for 39 years. The cold went through her from the scalp down. She looked at the neck, at the phoenix in the wax, at the man crouched on the floor of a private elevator holding an invitation to his own wedding. You never proposed, she said. It was not a question, and she had not decided to say it. I have never met her. That's not possible. I have met her 4 times, he said. At funerals and board dinners. I have never spoken to her alone. He turned the card over. There was nothing on the back but the wax. Who gave you this? I want to see identification, Savannah said. He looked up. You want my identification? You could be anyone. You could be the man who ordered this printed. You could be standing there telling me a story, so I hand you a name, and the second I hand you that name, a man I've worked with for 6 years has a very bad week. She held out her hand and it stayed level. Identification. Something with a face and a date on it. For a long moment he stayed where he was. Then he stood, took out his wallet, and gave her his driver's license, a black card with the Phoenix Crown crest, and a folded property registration with his name on the title line. She read all 3 under the emergency light. She checked the date of birth against the face. She checked the name against the card in his hand, letter by letter, the way she checked a seating chart. She gave them back. Now the name, he said. Now I tell you what I can. I was hired by a planner. The planner was hired by an office. He was not permitted to name the client. I was not permitted to ask, and the inner cards came to me sealed, pre-printed, in cartons I never opened. She nodded at the card. I have never seen those 2 names in my life until 11 seconds ago. His name. When I've spoken to him, you are standing in my building, and you are asking me to break a contract I signed 19 hours ago on the word of a man I met in a broken elevator. She pulled his jacket off her shoulders and held it out. You want me to be careful with your name, be careful with mine. He took the jacket. He looked at her for 3 full seconds. Read, he said, reading the small blind-stamped mark on the corner of the presentation box. Read and ink. Savannah Reed. Something crossed his face at that, fast, and it was gone before she could name it. Fine, he said. Speak to your planner, tonight. Tonight. He crouched again by the spilled envelopes, and this time he kept his hands off them. He was looking at the wax seal on the opened one. You cut this die? No. It came from the client's printer. Everything sealed came from them. Look at it. I've looked at it 40 times. Look at it now. She knelt. He held the card so the amber light came across the wax at an angle, which was exactly how she would have held it, and that annoyed her more than anything else he had done. The bird. Wings folded backward. Tail feathers curling under. It's clean, she said. Deep press, sharp shoulders, no bleed at the edge. That's a hand-cut steel die. That's $4,000 of die. Look at the wings. She looked at the wings. The right wing folded down along the body and tucked under the tail. The left wing folded down along the body and tucked under the tail. They were the same. They're symmetrical, she said slowly. Yes. Should they not be? Seung-jae reached up, turned his head, and touched 2 fingers to the ink under his right ear, and traced it down the tendon to the collarbone. This bird is on the deed of every property my family owns, he said. On the founding charter, on my father's headstone. In 109 years, no one has ever drawn it with the wings the same. The card sat between them in the light. The right wing turns up, he said. Always. It has turned up since the first drawing. Savannah put her thumb and forefinger on the edges of the card, the way she held a proof, and tilted it once more. "That's not a printing error," she said. "No. Somebody recut the die." "Yes." "Which means somebody sat down with the original in front of them and made a choice." Above them, far up the shaft, something metal struck something metal, and a voice shouted down in Korean, and a second voice answered from below. Sung-jae stood, and he took the card with him. "When the doors open," he said, "there will be men outside. A number of them. They will not touch you." "How many is a number?" The cabin lurched, caught, and began to rise. 30, he said. The doors took 11 seconds to open, and Savannah used all 11 to get the last envelopes off the floor. She counted them into the box by touch. 94. 6 had slid under the handrail. She went down on one knee in a wet coat and fished them out with 2 fingers, corner first, so the gold leaf wouldn't press. "Leave those," Sung-jae said. "They're not yours to leave." He watched her lid the box and stand up before he faced the doors. When the seam finally split, the light in the corridor came in flat and white, and 30 men came into view at once. They were not standing the way men stand in movies. They were standing the way men stand in an airport when a flight has been canceled and nobody has told them why. 2 rows. Nobody with a hand visible below the waist. The nearest one had an earpiece and a scar across the side of his chin, and he moved before anyone else did. "Boss." "Nobody speaks to her," Sung-jae said in English, then repeated something shorter in Korean, and the second row backed up half a step in one motion. The man with the scar looked at the box in her arms the way a customs officer looks at a suitcase. "That comes with me," Savannah said. "Ma'am?" "Darius Cole," Sung-jae said. "My chief of security. Darius, this is Savannah Reed. She has property in her hands that belongs to a client she has not identified. It stays in her hands." Darius kept his eyes on the box. "It's evidence." "Of what?" Savannah said. "You've had it in your building for 4 minutes. That landed somewhere." Darius's jaw moved once, and he looked at his boss instead of at her, which told her everything about who ran the floor. "She walks out with it," Sung-jae said. "Sir, we have an unverified—" "She walks out with it." Savannah shifted the box to her hip so her right hand was free, and the movement made 4 men reset their feet. She noticed that. She filed it next to the fact that her shoes were still full of rainwater. "How many of them speak English?" she asked, without turning her head. "All of them." "Then say the part about not touching me in English." He said it in English, loudly, twice. A man near the fire door flinched at the second one, and Savannah decided that man was the youngest one there, and probably the one to watch. They moved her down the corridor without touching her. It was a strange kind of escort, a bubble of 6 feet on all sides, doors already open before she got to them, nobody breathing near her face. At the end of the hall, a woman in a housekeeping uniform stopped dead with a stack of towels and turned around without being told. "Where are we going?" Savannah said. 22. "There's a room with a table and a door you can open from the inside." Say that part again. "A door you can open from the inside." He didn't slow down. "You'll test it. Test it now if you want." She did. The room he put her in had a door with a lever handle and no card reader, and she pushed it open, let it close, pushed it open again. Darius watched from 4 feet away with the flat patience of a man being made to prove something he already knew. The table was long and clean and had nothing on it. She set the box down in the middle, squared it to the edge, and only then took off her coat because her hands were shaking and she wanted them steady before anyone saw. "Coffee," Sung-jae said to someone. Then, to her, "Or not coffee." "Coffee. Black. And a towel that isn't going to shed on the envelopes." He said something in Korean. A man left at a jog. Savannah pulled out a chair, sat, and put both palms flat on the wood. "I need 3 things," she said. "Say them." "My phone stays mine. I call my planner myself, from this room, and nobody stands close enough to hear his voice." "Done." "Second, nobody photographs this box, opens this box, or touches the cartons in my studio. There are 4 more, sealed, and they're not mine either." Something happened behind his eyes at 4 more. But he only nodded. Done. Third, when I'm finished, I go home. Not with a car, not with a driver, not with a nice man walking me to my door. That one I'll argue about. Then we're already off to a great start. A man came back at the same jog with a cup and a folded stack of lint-free polishing cloths, the kind used on watch crystals, and Savannah looked at them and then at Sung Jae. Somebody in this building knows what gold leaf is, she said. Somebody in this building buys watches. She took 2 cloths and laid them under the box before she touched anything else. Her hands had stopped shaking by then. She checked the top 3 envelopes for water at the flap and found the gold intact on all of them, and she let out a breath she'd been holding since the cabin dropped. Darius set the coffee down himself. He put it at her right hand, handle turned, the way you do when you've served a lot of nervous people, and the small competence of it made her like him slightly more than she wanted to. Sung Jae stayed standing on the far side of the table, which she understood now was deliberate, and he pulled one thing from his inside pocket. The invitation. The open one. The card that had slid out of the split envelope 50 minutes and 1 lifetime ago. He laid it face up between them and pushed it exactly halfway. Before you call anyone, he said, look at the paper again. I've looked at the paper. Look at the back of it. She turned it and stopped. The reverse of the inner card was blank except for a blind emboss in the lower right corner. No ink, just pressure, the kind of mark a letterpress leaves when the plate is struck without color. A small mark, 2 letters and a numeral. PF2, she read. What is that? A plate code. She tilted the card toward the light. Printers number their matrices. If you run a job in 3 plates, you code them so the pressman doesn't mix them up. This is a hand-cut die, not a plate, so somebody's tracking it like an asset. She turned the card back over. Somebody has more than one. More than one what? More than one of whatever PF1 was. He put his hands on the back of the chair opposite her, and for the first time since the cabin dropped, he leaned. Say that in a sentence a lawyer would understand. Whoever made your fake seal made it as a numbered object in a set. She set the card down. You don't number one thing. He was quiet for 4 or 5 seconds. Down the hall, a phone rang twice and was killed mid-ring. Darius. Boss. Find out who holds the ballroom for the 26th. Darius already had a tablet out. He worked it with 2 thumbs, standing, and the room got very still around the small sound of glass being tapped. Ballroom A and the terrace room, he said. Both blocked, whole day. By who? Internal hold. No requester name on the line. Darius scrolled. Created 11 days ago, 11:40 in the morning, through the executive booking queue. Which requires 2 approvals. It shows 2 approvals. A pause. Both of them are system IDs, not people. Savannah watched the boss's face and saw absolutely nothing move on it, which by now she read as the loudest thing in the room. There's one more, she said. Front desk sent me to floor 9 to find a Miss Vance. Ballroom operations. Darius looked up. There's no Vance on my building. Check anyway. He checked. It took a while. No Vance in payroll. No Vance in contractor access. No Vance badged into this property in the last 2 years. He turned the tablet around, not to Sung Jae, to her, which she noticed. But the delivery ticket exists. Somebody opened it in the system 2 days ago. Vendor drop-off, service entrance, floor 9, contact Vance. 2 days ago, she said. I signed my contract 2 days ago at 1 in the morning. Nobody said anything for a beat. So they knew you'd come before you agreed to come, Sung Jae said. They knew somebody would come. She wrapped both hands around the coffee. Whoever it was, they built me a hallway. And the hallway flooded. And the elevators went private. She looked up at him. Somebody wanted a courier walked into the east cabins tonight. That cabin has 1 key card, he said. Mine. Then somebody wanted me standing in front of it when it opened. Or wanted me standing in front of you. She looked up. Say more. You had 100 invitations to my wedding in your arms, he said. I had no idea the wedding existed. If those doors open on any other night, I take the box, I open 1 card in my own office, and I make 3 phone calls before sunrise with nobody watching my face. He set 2 fingers on the table. Tonight, I opened it in a stopped elevator. in front of a witness who does not work for me and cannot be paid by me. That's worse for you. That's better for me, and whoever built the hallway would know it. He straightened. So they didn't build it. Savannah turned the coffee cup a quarter turn. Then they built it for the version where I never say a word. Delivery, signature, service corridor, gone. And the flood broke that. The flood, she said, and a woman who reads a contract before she signs it. He straightened off the chair back. Whatever he was about to say, Darius got there first, quietly, in the voice of a man who does not enjoy being right. Sir, then the substation is a question, not an accident. Pull the maintenance log, Sung-jae said. Every hand that touched the East Bank this week, and I want the front desk audio from tonight. Front desk isn't recorded. Since when? Since the privacy retrofit. 2 months. Savannah drank the coffee. It was very good coffee, which annoyed her. I'd like to make my call now, she said. They cleared the room. Not all the way. Darius stood at the far end by the window with his back turned, and Sung-jae went as far as the doorway, and then, after a second, past it, into the corridor, out of sight. She heard him tell somebody in Korean to move further down. She pulled out her phone. 12% battery. 9 missed calls from the bank, 1 from a supplier, and nothing at all from Calvin Ross. She dialed him anyway. 4 rings. 5. On the 6th he picked up and she could hear he'd been asleep and had a light on already. Savannah. It's 1 in the morning. It's 1:45. Then it's 1:45. A rustle. Did the drop go? Not yet. That woke him. What do you mean, not yet? I'm in the building. There was a situation with the elevators. She kept her voice exactly where it lived when she quoted prices to nervous brides. Calvin, who's Miss Vance? Silence. Vance, she said again. That's the contact on the ticket. That's not what I asked. Who is she? Have you met her? Have you talked to her? Savannah. Have you heard her voice? There's an office, Calvin said. I deal with an office. Say the name of the office. That's Clause 11, and you know it's Clause 11. Clause 11 says I don't ask who's getting married. She stood up and walked to the end of the table so her back was to Darius. It doesn't say I can't ask who's paying you. It's the same question, and you know that too. A chair creaked wherever he was. She could hear him lighting something. It's a number. It's a phone number, and a wire origin, and a courier who brings me paper. 19 years, Savannah. You think that's the first client who never showed me a face? How much did they pay you? Don't. How much? More than you, he said, and there was something under it that wasn't pride. She let that sit. One of the inner cards came open, she said. The line went so quiet that she checked the screen to see if the battery had gone. Calvin. How? The box tipped. A seal split. It wasn't my hand, and it wasn't my choice. Did you read it? It read itself. It was face up on the floor of an elevator. She listened to him breathe. It's a wedding on the 26th. 2 names. Savannah, 2 names, Calvin, and one of them says he never proposed. Now she heard the sound of a man standing up too fast, a lamp base knocking, a foot finding a shoe. Where are you right now? You know where I am. You wrote the address on the delivery sheet. Are you alone? No. He said a word she had not heard from him in 6 years, and then he said, Okay. Listen to me. Put the box down. Walk out the front. Go home. Lock up. And don't touch the other 4 cartons. In the morning, I'll come get everything and I'll pay you the second half myself, out of my account, tonight if you want, and this never. You'd pay $42,500 out of your own account at 2 in the morning to make me stop talking. I'd pay it to keep you out of a room you don't belong in. That's not the same sentence. No, Calvin said. It isn't. She looked at the window. The rain had thinned to something that ran instead of fell, and 22 floors down the strip was still burning through it. Who recut the die? She said. What? The wax medallion on your red tape? The one on the sealed cards. Somebody hand-cut a steel die of the Park Phoenix, and they cut the wings wrong, and the cutting alone costs $4,000. That's not a printer's mistake. That's a commission. Who commissioned it? I don't know what you're talking about. You brought the cartons in 6 trips. and on the fourth one you told me not to look at the material too closely. I told you not to look, because looking is what gets people." He stopped himself so hard she heard his teeth. "Finish it. Deliver the 100, Calvin said, and his voice had gone flat and careful, the voice he used with vendors he was about to drop. "Deliver the 100, take the money, and I'll handle the rest. Please. I want a copy of your client contract." "No. Then I'm giving your name to the man whose face is on the invitation. Savannah, if you say my name in that building, give me a reason not to." She waited. She gave him 7 full seconds, counted them off the clock on the wall, and she meant to give him more, and she never got the chance, because the call ended from his side. She stood there with the dead phone in her hand. Then she called back. It rang once and went to a recording. She called a third time and it went straight to the recording without ringing at all, and she understood that he had turned the phone off. Savannah put the phone face down on the table and pressed both hands flat on either side of it. Her heart was doing something stupid. She waited it out. When she looked up, Darius was still facing the window, exactly as he had been, and she was almost sure he had not heard a word, and completely sure he had heard the shape of all of it. "Mr. Cole." He turned. "Ma'am, would you get him for me?" Sung-jae came in with his sleeves still down and his hands empty. He stopped at the same spot on the far side of the table, and she found she resented how carefully he did that. "Calvin Ross," she said. "Vow and Crown Events. 19 years in this city, 6 of them with me. He's the planner. He hired me, he wrote the contract, he brought the sealed cartons in his own car, and 40 minutes ago he offered to pay me $42,500 out of his personal account to stop this conversation. He took it without moving. Then, thank you." "Don't." "Why not?" "Because I just gave you a man's name at 2 in the morning in a building with 30 guards in it, and if something happens to Calvin Ross tonight, I'm the reason." She held his eyes. "So don't thank me. Tell me what happens to him." "Nothing happens to him." That's a sentence men say. It's also a sentence that can be true. He pulled the chair out at last and sat, which put his eyes below hers for the first time all night. "If he vanishes, I lose the only person who has spoken to whoever bought this. He's worth more to me breathing and talking than he is worth to me afraid. He's already afraid. Then he's already useful." She hated that it was the answer she'd have given. Darius came back in without knocking. "Boss." Ross's agency line rolls to voicemail. "Sells off. I've got a home address in Summerlin. Nobody goes to his house." Darius stopped. "Sir, nobody goes to his house tonight." Sung-jae turned the invitation face down on the table with one finger. "If we knock on that door at 2 in the morning, he runs, and everything he knows runs with him. Put 2 men on the street where he can't see them, and if he moves, you follow, and you do not stop him. And if he books a flight, then you tell me, and I stop the plane." Savannah looked between them and decided not to ask whether that was a figure of speech. "There's a faster thread," she said. Both men looked at her. "He said his client is a phone number and a wire origin. Fine, chase that." She reached over and turned the invitation face up again, because she wanted the die mark visible. But the wire came after the die. "Somebody paid a cutter to hand-cut a steel matrix of your family crest. Steel dies of that quality. There aren't 50 people in the country who do it. There are maybe 9. You know them? I know 6. I've bought from 4. She pulled the caramel portfolio onto the table and opened it, and a small rain of damp business cards and swatch chips came out with the notebook. "One of them is in Pasadena. One's in Portland. One's an 81-year-old man in Chicago who still answers his own phone and has kept the drawing for every die he ever cut. They keep records. They keep files. Commission files. Who ordered it, what they submitted as artwork, what they paid." She found the page she wanted and flattened it with her palm. "If somebody handed a cutter a drawing of your Phoenix, that drawing is sitting in a folder right now with a name on the invoice line." He was very still. Then he said, quietly, "Say the last part again." "The drawing is in a folder with a name on it." Something moved across his face. It was the second time tonight, and it was the same one. the thing that had crossed him when he read. Read in ink. Off the lid of the box, and it was gone before she could name it. You'll make those calls, he said. It wasn't a question. Not for you. For yourself, then. For my mother's business name, which is on the box you're all standing around. She closed the portfolio. If a fake seal shows up in a court file in 6 months, the calligrapher's name is on every envelope in the room. Mine. In gold. 1,200 times. That got something out of him that was almost a smile and didn't quite arrive. You keep saying 1,200. He said, the number I keep hearing is 100. 100 is what I finished. 1,200 is what I signed for. She stood and put her coat on, and it was still cold and heavy, and she put it on anyway. 992 of your fake invitations are in envelopes I haven't written yet. Which means somebody out there is expecting them by the 26th. Then they'll call you. Yes, she said, they will. The room did a thing then that rooms do when everyone in them arrives at the same thought a half-second apart. When they call, Seung-jae said, I want to be standing next to you. That's not on my list of 3 things. Add it as a 4th. No. Ms. Reed. I said no. She picked up the box. You want to know what I did in that elevator? I checked your license and your registration, and I still wouldn't hand you a name until I'd called the man myself. That's how I work. I verify, then I move. You don't get to skip to the part where I'm useful. He stood. He didn't come around the table. What do you need? He said. A dry car back to my studio, which I'm going to refuse, and then I'm going to walk out and get soaked again out of pure stubbornness, and you're going to let me. That's a terrible plan. It's my terrible plan. There are men in this city who are going to want that box by Thursday. Then they'll have to come to an 1,100 square foot storefront with a payment notice on the glass and take it off a woman who hasn't slept in 30 hours. She got the box balanced. I'd like to see how that looks in the morning paper. For a moment nobody moved, and then Seung-jae did something she wasn't ready for. He walked to the door, opened it, and stood aside. Darius, he said, nobody follows her. Darius's face did not agree with his mouth. Understood. Nobody follows her, and nobody parks on her street, and if a single one of my people is within a block of Reed and Ink tonight, I'll know it by breakfast, and so will you. Understood, sir. She got as far as the corridor before he said her name. Not. Ms. Reed. Her name? Savannah. She turned. He was holding out a card. Matte black, 1 number, nothing else. That's not the hotel, he said. That's the phone in my pocket. It rings 4 people. She looked at it a beat too long. Why do I get to be the 5th? Because in 50 minutes on the floor of an elevator, you never once asked me for anything. She took the card. She put it in the inside pocket of the portfolio, the one with the zipper, and she zipped it. If you call Calvin Ross before I do, she said, we're finished before we start. I won't. You'll want to. Yes. She went down in a public elevator with 2 other guests and a luggage cart, and nobody looked at her twice, and the lobby doors let her out into a city that had been rinsed down to the concrete. The rain had turned into something almost gentle. She walked 4 blocks before she got a cab, and she got in with the box on her lap like a woman carrying a cake, and she gave the driver an address he had to ask her to repeat because her voice had gone somewhere. At the studio, the notice was still on the glass. 11 days of desert sun had gone through the top half of it and turned notice to pay or quit into something the color of weak tea. She let herself in, set the box on the near table, turned on 1 lamp, not the overheads. The 4 cartons were where she had left them, stacked 2 by 2 against the flat file, banded in red, each band stamped with its wax medallion. She crossed the room and crouched in front of them. The seal on the top carton was a clean, deep press with both wings folded down. So was the second, the third. The 4th one was different. She got the light closer. It took her a full minute to be sure, because it was small, and because her eyes had been open for a day and a half, and because part of her did not want to be sure. On the 4th medallion, there was a hairline nick through the tail feathers, a scratch in the die itself, printed into every impression it made. It wasn't on the other 3, which meant the 4th carton had been sealed with a different die, which meant there were two. She sat back on her heels on the cold floor of her own studio and said, out loud, to nobody, PF1. Her phone buzzed on the table. She had to stand up to reach it, and she was already telling herself it was the bank, and it wasn't the bank. It was a number, with no name attached. 11 digits, a Las Vegas prefix she'd never seen. The message was 4 words. Don't open the 4th one. She stood in the lamplight with the phone in her hand and read it twice, and while she was reading it, a second message came in under the first, and this one was 3 words, and it was worse. They're watching you now. Savannah typed 3 words back and deleted them before her thumb reached the arrow. She set the phone face down on the stone slab and walked to the front of the studio instead. The eviction notice was still taped to the outside of the glass, and past it the street held one parked car, empty. She stood there long enough to count to 60. Nothing moved. She turned the deadbolt anyway and dragged the flat file 18 inches across the floor until it blocked the door frame at the hinge side. Then she went back to the 4th carton. She crouched next to it with her hands on her knees because putting them anywhere else would have meant touching it. The wax medallion held the nick across the tail feathers, thin as a hair, deliberate as a signature. She looked at it for 2 full minutes. She left it sealed. Not out of obedience, she wrote it out for herself first, in ink, on a scrap of practice paper. An unopened box is evidence. An opened box is an argument. Whoever had sent that message wanted her hands on that seal. She wrote the second line under the first. Nobody tells you not to open a thing unless the thing is the proof. She lifted the carton by the underside, carried it to the far wall, and slid it into the bottom drawer of the flat file, the deep one where she stored handmade stock. She locked the drawer and put the key in the zip pocket of the portfolio, next to a matte black card with 1 number on it. She took the card out and looked at it. It was 3:10 in the morning. She had 90 minutes of sleep in the last 2 days and 992 inner envelopes waiting on the long table, and the smartest thing she could do was nothing until sunrise. She dialed. He answered on the second ring, and he was not asleep. Savannah. 2 messages, same number, Vegas prefix, 4 minutes apart. She read them out flat, the way she would read a delivery address. Don't open the 4th one, they're watching you now. There was a pause on the line with no breathing in it. Say the number. She said the number. Somewhere behind him a chair moved and a door opened, and a voice she recognized as Darius Cole's said something in Korean, low and fast, then stopped. You're inside the studio, Sung-jae said, with the door blocked. I want 2 men on Charleston, not the street, the cross street. No, Savannah, you gave me an order last night in front of 30 people, and I'm holding you to it. Nobody within a block. She pulled a stool over with her foot and sat on it. If somebody was watching me tonight, they were watching from where your men would be standing. I'd never know which was which. That's worse. He took that. She heard him take it. A beat of quiet where a man with 30 employees decides not to spend one. Then tell me what you want, he said. A contract. You have a contract. I have Calvin's contract, and Calvin has stopped answering his phone. She turned her hand over on her knee. There was still a smear of walnut ink at the base of her thumb, crossing the little crescent scar. I want one with you, on paper, written by somebody who works for me. There's a suite on 21. That's not a contract, that's a room. It's a floor with 1 elevator and my card. I know exactly what it is. Her voice stayed level. You want to know where I am at all times, and you'd tell yourself it's protection. And for about 4 days you'd even be right. She looked at the blocked door. I've read enough of these to know what happens after day 4. My lawyer's office opens at 8:30. You have a lawyer. I have my mother's lawyer. It's the same thing at this hour. He said something to Darius, away from the phone. Then, closer, 11 o'clock. Front entrance, not the service door. Why the front? Because everyone in that building watched you leave through a corridor last night, like something being removed, he said. You'll come back through the doors people are photographed in. She hung up before he could hear anything in her breathing that she hadn't put there on purpose. Denise Whitfield had an office in a low tan building on West Charleston between a dialysis center and a place that made trophies, and she had been drawing up other people's paperwork for 31 years. She was 64. She read the vow and crown contract twice, once with her glasses and once without, then took the glasses off entirely. Who wrote Clause 11? His office typed it. He brought it. Nobody types a clause like that for a wedding. Denise squared the pages. Baby, they typed that for a deposition. That's a clause written by somebody who has already imagined being asked. Savannah put both hands flat on the desk. I need a second agreement. Separate paper. Not with Calvin. With who? The Park Group. Denise's pen stopped moving. The hotel, Savannah said. The whole thing. I know who they are. My son valets on Flamingo. Denise set the pen down carefully, the way people set things down when they want their hands free. Say the rest of it. Savannah said the rest of it. She left out the elevator floor and the folded jacket and left in everything else. The sealed cartons, the name on the inner card, the wing turned the wrong way, the blind emboss reading PF2, the nick in the wax on the fourth box, the 2 messages at 3 in the morning. It took 11 minutes. Denise wrote 4 words on a legal pad the entire time. You've already broken your own confidentiality clause telling me this. I broke it telling him. You're my attorney, so you're free. Somebody taught you well. She's dead, Savannah said. You wrote her will. Denise looked at her for a moment, then pulled a fresh pad toward herself and started to write for real. They built it in an hour and 40 minutes. Independent consultancy, not employment. The distinction mattered, and Denise said it out loud 3 times. Savannah Reed, retained as visual identity and document consultant, $250 an hour, invoiced weekly, paid in 7 days, or the agreement terminates on its own. No exclusivity, no non-disparagement, no confidentiality clause running past the point at which any law enforcement agency asks her a question. Then the clause Savannah dictated herself, and Denise wrote down exactly as spoken. The Park Group, its officers, its subsidiaries, its foundation, and any entity acting on its behalf shall acquire no interest of any kind in Reed & Inc., its client list, its archive, its dies, its unfinished work, or any work product created before this agreement. No lien, no option, no purchase, no introduction to her landlord, no payment of her debts, direct or through a third party, without written request from her. Denise stopped typing at that last one. You want to forbid a man from paying your rent? Yes. He could do it in 20 minutes and you'd never trace it. That's why it's in the contract. Savannah watched the cursor blink. If he does it after signing that, I don't have a benefactor, I have a breach. Denise printed 3 copies and charged $1,500, a discount they both recognized. At the door, she caught Savannah's sleeve. The eviction, your landlord filed on Tuesday. Formal hearing is in 9 days. 9. The $42,500 you took in covers the arrears and the fees, with about $6,000 left over. Pay it today, and the filing dies. Denise let go of the sleeve. Don't hold that money as leverage against a bad situation. That's how people lose buildings. Savannah paid it from the parking lot with the sun coming through the windshield, and watched the balance drop to $5,811. Then she drove to the Phoenix Crown. She came in through the front entrance at 11 o'clock in a wine-colored coat, with the caramel portfolio under her arm and 3 copies of a contract in it, and she was met in the middle of the lobby by Darius Cole in a graphite suit and by nobody else, which she understood immediately was a decision somebody had made on her behalf. Ms. Reed. 1 escort. His instruction, not mine. Darius turned and walked beside her rather than ahead. For the record, I argued for 4. For the record, I noticed. The elevator he used was public. 22nd floor, then a corridor, then a room she hadn't been in. Long table, no windows on one side, a wall of screens showing spreadsheets instead of cameras. Sung-jae was standing at the far end with his sleeves still down and his jacket still on, which meant he had been standing there a while and had decided not to get comfortable before she arrived. There was a suite key on the table in front of the chair nearest him. Black card, gold edge. Savannah looked at it, then pulled out the chair 2 seats down and sat in that one. That's a no, he said. That's a no. There are 5 men in this building I'd trust with my accounts, and 2 I'd trust with a door. Both of them are on that floor, and the whole city knows which floor it is. She unzipped the portfolio and took out the 3 copies. The night this started, somebody built a delivery ticket for a woman who doesn't exist so a stranger could walk into your elevator. You want to solve that by putting me 20 feet from your bedroom. Darius made a sound that was almost a cough. Read it, Savannah said, and slid the pages down the table. Sung-jae read standing up. She watched his eyes move and timed him. He was on the 2nd page in under a minute, which meant he read contracts often and read them properly, and that told her more about him than the driver's license had. He stopped at the last clause. Went back to the top of it, read it again. No payment of her debts, direct or through a third party. He looked up. You think I would? I think you already thought about it. The pause was long enough to be an answer. Last night, he said, you walked 4 blocks in the rain to a taxi rather than take a car. This morning, my head of security tells me a notice of eviction has been on your window for 12 days. He set the pages down. So yes, I thought about it. And now you can't. Now I can't. He picked up a pen from the table. Heavy, black, capped, uncapped it, and signed all 3 copies without asking for a single change. Then he pushed them back and said, $250 an hour is under market. It's my market. It's under it. Then I'll raise it in 6 days when you're used to me. Something happened at the edge of his mouth and did not become anything. He capped the pen. Darius, bring in the audit. It came in as paper, 4 inches of it, because Savannah had said the word screen, and Darius had said the word discovery, and Sung-jae had said print it. They laid it out along the table in 11 stacks and worked through it standing. The room hold on Ballroom A was the smallest thing in the pile. Flowers. Ridgeline floral design, an order of $211,000, paid in full 9 days earlier, 40% above their own written estimate. Peonies, flown wet from Chile. A ceremonial arch, 16 feet, structural steel core, already under construction in a warehouse in North Las Vegas. Catering, $386,000, deposit and balance, both cleared, 1,200 covers. A menu with a Korean banquet course, drafted by a consultant in Seoul, signed off by an initial, not a name. Music, a quartet for the ceremony, a 9-piece for the reception, both holding the date for 4 months. Rooms, a block of 180 rooms, held under a corporate code, checking in on the 24th. Transport, 11 vehicles, 2 armored, running from Harry Reid International all day on the 24th. Savannah worked with a pencil and did not write on their paper. She wrote on her own, 1 line per item, in her hand, capitals, and by the 3rd stack, Darius had stopped watching her do it and started reading over her shoulder instead. Stop, she said, at the 7th stack. She turned the page around. It was a guest list, 1,200 names, 406 of them with Seoul addresses, the rest scattered across Los Angeles, Vancouver, Honolulu, New York, sorted by table, and at the top of the file, in a header nobody had bothered to strip, a date stamp. This list was compiled 5 months ago, she said. Sung-jae leaned in over the page. Look at the addresses. Savannah tapped the 3rd column with the blunt end of the pencil. Somebody had these people's private residences. Not offices, not assistants. Houses. She moved down 11 lines. That's a formatting habit. Building number, street, unit, comma, comma. Every single line. One person typed this, 1 time, from a list they already had. From my father's funeral, Sung-jae said. Everyone in the room heard him say it. The condolence register. He straightened. 411 Korean names signed a book in this building 3 years ago, and my aunt kept the book. Savannah made a mark on her own paper. She did not ask the follow-up question, and later she would think about how carefully she chose not to. Who paid? She said instead. Darius put a single sheet down in the middle of the table. Everything. Flowers, food, rooms, cars, the ballroom deposit that was never charged to a card because it's our own building. He tapped it. 1 originator. Crown Wing Holdings, LLC. Nevada. Formed 5 months and 1 week ago. Registered agent is a mail service on Sahara that files 4,000 of these a year. Officers? A manager designation. It's a law firm. And the funding? That's the part I've been sitting on for 2 hours. Darius looked at Sung-jae and not at Savannah, and then, deliberately, at Savannah too. Crownwing has been funded in 9 transfers, every one under the reporting threshold, every one from an account that clears through a correspondent bank in Seoul before it lands here. He put a second sheet next to the first. Same originating routing as the transfer that paid Vow and Crown events. Savannah put the pencil down. So the man who hired me, and the money that bought 400 peonies, came out of the same faucet. Same faucet, Darius said. Then it's not a scam. She said it slowly, because she was assembling it as she said it, and she wanted them to hear the assembly. Nobody spends $900,000 on a wedding that isn't going to happen. This isn't a bluff for the papers. Somebody intends for 1,200 people to be sitting in that room on the 26th. Yes, Sung-jae said, which means they intend for you to be standing at the front of it. He held her eyes for exactly as long as it took to say yes. The door opened. She had a bodyguard behind her and an assistant beside her, and she came in ahead of both, and she was in ivory, a column dress, low heels, pearls at the ears, black hair cut just below the shoulder and pinned back off her face. 34 years old. She stopped 4 steps into the room and looked at the paper on the table before she looked at any of the people. Hae-rin, Sung-jae said. They said you had documents. Yoon Hae-rin's English was clipped and unhurried. I flew in this morning. I want to see them. Who told you? A florist. She said it without any expression at all. A florist in Los Angeles called my mother's assistant to confirm the color of a bouquet I have never ordered for a wedding I learned about from a florist. Darius moved a chair for her. She sat and she read for 6 straight minutes without touching anything, which Savannah noticed because it was the same instinct that had kept her own hands off other people's paper all morning. Then Hae-rin stopped at the catering sheet. That's my grandmother's soup, she said. Nobody spoke. Second course. That's a Yoon family funeral soup, not a wedding course. Whoever wrote this menu has eaten at my house. She sat back. I have signed nothing. I have agreed to nothing. I have met this man 4 times, and one of those was at his father's memorial, and we spoke for less than 2 minutes. Say the rest, Sung-jae said. There is no rest. Hae-rin. Her jaw set, briefly, and released. In March, I signed 41 documents in my father's office in one afternoon. Foundation renewals, share transfers, 3 trust amendments. I sign what my father's counsel puts in front of me. That is what I have always done, and every daughter in that building does the same thing. She looked up. If there is a signature of mine on something, it will have come from that afternoon. Savannah spoke for the first time. Digital or wet? Hae-rin turned to look at her properly. I'm sorry. Who are you? Savannah Reed. I make the invitations. You make. Hae-rin stopped. Something crossed her face that was not hostility. You have seen them. The invitations. I wrote 100 of them by hand before I knew whose they were. What do they look like? The question landed in the room sideways, and it was the first human thing anyone had said in 2 hours. Ivory stock, 800 gram, deckled by hand, Savannah said. Gold leaf on the initials. Your name is on the right side, and the letters are a little taller than his, because that's how the layout was specified. She let a beat go. Someone cared a great deal about how it looked. Hae-rin's hand went to the pearl at her left ear and stopped there. Digital, she said at last. Most of them. There's a tablet. You sign with a stylus, and it drops into whichever document they've queued. Savannah wrote 1 line on her own paper. A signature made on glass has no pressure, no ductus, no hesitation marks. It could be moved from a renewal form to a marriage agreement by anybody with the file, and no examiner alive could tell where it had originally been made. She did not say that part out loud yet. The call from Seoul came at 2:10, and it came on the wall screen, and Yoon Myung-ho did not look like a man being caught at anything. 61. Navy suit, wine tie, gray hair combed straight back. Behind him a window and a gray afternoon 11,000 kilometers and 16 hours away. He looked at his daughter first. You flew without telling me. I flew to ask a question. Then ask me and not him. He turned to the camera. Sung-jae. You look like your father when you stand like that. There's a wedding in my building in 13 days, Sung-jae said. I did not agree to it. You did not have to agree to it. Your father did. The room got very quiet. 3 years ago, Myung-ho's hands came together on the desk in front of him. 11 days before he died, in the room off the ballroom downstairs, your father told me that the two houses had been circling each other for 40 years, and that he was tired of it. He said, my son will need a wall behind him. He said, your daughter is the wall. We shook hands on it. There were 3 men in that room. Name them. One is dead, one retired to Jeju, one is on my board. So one witness who works for you. So a promise made by a man who never broke one, Myung-ho said, and his voice went up for the first time. You want it typed? Your father's generation did not type. You know exactly how many things in your own house exist because 2 old men agreed in a room and nobody typed it. Sung-jae put both hands on the back of a chair, then explained the $900,000. Explain what? Flowers, catering, cars, an arch under construction in a warehouse. All of it paid 5 months before anyone told me my own name was on an invitation. He leaned in. Who paid it, Myung-ho? Something happened in the older man's face. It was small and it was fast, and Savannah, standing at the far end of a long table with a pencil in her hand, saw it clearly, because she had spent 11 years watching brides read seating charts, and she knew the difference between a man who is caught and a man who has just learned something. The foundation is handling the arrangements, Myung-ho said. Which foundation? Yours. Nobody answered him. The Park Family Foundation is handling the arrangements, he said again, slower, because that is what your aunt told me in February when I asked who would receive my daughter's family in Las Vegas. The screen went to a Seoul afternoon and a still window, and Sung-jae reached over and turned it off himself. Park Mi-suk did not knock. She came through the door at 20 to 4 in a dark suit with a silk blouse under it and a brooch at the collar. 58 years old, her back so straight it changed the posture of everyone she passed. Her hair was black threaded with silver in a chignon that had not moved all day. She looked at the paper on the table for about a second and a half. You've made the room untidy, she said. Aunt? Your father took meetings in here. He never let paper touch the wood. She set a small folder down and did not open it. You've been calling vendors. Darius has been calling vendors. Then Darius has been telling the city of Las Vegas that the Park family does not know what its own foundation is paying for. She turned then and looked directly at Savannah for the first time. And this is the calligrapher. Savannah Reed. Reed. Mi-suk repeated it once, quietly, the way a person repeats a word they intend to keep. You were in the elevator. I was. How unlucky for you. I've had worse nights. Mi-suk's expression did not change, but she looked at Savannah for 1 full second longer than the sentence required, and then turned away. The arrangements are foundation business, she said to her nephew. Your father's estate left the family's ceremonial obligations to the foundation, and the foundation has a president. That is me. There is nothing improper about a foundation paying for a family event. There's no event. There is an alliance. There is no alliance. There will be a vote. Mi-suk opened the folder at last, took out a single page and laid it in the empty space at the center of the table where the paper had been cleared. The council convenes on the 25th, here, at the engagement party, which is on the calendar, which has been on the calendar, and which 400 people have already booked flights for. She smoothed the page flat with 2 fingers. 11 voting members. They will vote on the Park-Yoon Alliance and the associated restructure. If it carries, the wedding proceeds the following evening, and you may stand there with whatever expression you like. And if it fails, then you will have humiliated 2 families in front of 600 guests, and I will have done what I could. She looked at the wall of screens. 12 days, Sung-jae. Spend them well. She left. The door closed with almost no sound at all. Darius picked up the page. Read it. Handed it to Sung-jae. 11 members, Darius said. 6 of them she appointed. Savannah was still looking at the closed door. She had one hand flat on her own sheet of paper, the one with her own handwriting on it, and she was aware that her pulse had gone up, and that it had gone up at a specific moment, not at the vote, not at the 12 days, but at the sound of a woman saying her surname once and deciding to keep it. She picked up her pencil, wrote the date of the 25th, underlined it once. I need something. she said. Sung Jae looked over. Name it. Every document Hye-rin signed in March. All 41. And I need them as originals, not scans of scans. That's her father's office. Then it's the fight. She capped her pencil in her fist. And I need to keep working. Working. 992 envelopes. She slid her paper into the portfolio and zipped it. Whoever ordered this expects 100 more by Friday. The day I stop delivering is the day they know you're awake. He was quiet for a moment. You want to keep lettering a wedding that shouldn't happen. I want to keep being the last person in the chain who touches the paper, Savannah said. You can't get to them. The paper can. She left through the front doors at 5:05, on foot, and walked the 4 blocks to where she'd parked, because the walk let her look at every car twice. At the studio, the eviction notice was gone from the glass. She had scraped it off herself at 9 that morning and thrown it in the bin behind the building, and the empty rectangle of clean glass where it had been was the best thing she had seen in 2 weeks. She let herself in, turned on all the lights this time, every one of them. Then her phone buzzed on the stone slab. Same number, Vegas prefix, no text this time. A photograph. It was taken through glass at night, slightly high, from across the street. It showed the inside of Reed & Ink at 3 in the morning. 1 lamp, 1 woman crouched beside a sealed carton with her hands on her knees. Underneath it, 2 words came in. Good girl. Savannah turned every light off again. She did it in the order they'd been installed, back to front, until the studio was the same room the photograph had been taken of, and then she stood in the middle of it and looked out at the street the way the camera had looked in. Across the road, the pawn shop, its awning. A gap between the awning post and a mailbox, wide enough for 1 man and a lens. She walked out into the street in her stocking feet and stood in the gap. From there, the flat file was visible, the stone slab, the corner of the long table where the sealed cartons had been stacked before she moved one of them. She went back inside and called the black card. He was standing at the pawn shop, she said, not in a car, standing. There's a nail in the post at shoulder height, and the awning canvas has a tear in it that lines up with the lamp. Sung Jae's voice came back level. You went outside. I measured the shot. A pause on the line, then the sound of him standing up somewhere, and a second voice behind him, and the word. Darius. Said quietly and without hurry. Send me the image, he said. It's my phone and it stays my phone. I'll show you tomorrow, in the room, on my screen. Savannah. That was the deal. She sat down on the stool. There's something else in it. Look at the timestamp when I show you, 3:04. That's 4 minutes after I put the 4th carton in the drawer and turned the key. So he saw you lock it. He saw me lock it, and he still texted me not to open it. She rolled the pencil under her palm on the slab. He didn't want the carton protected. He wanted me curious. He wanted me to be the one who broke the seal. Silence stretched. Because a broken seal is a broken contract, Sung Jae said. And a calligrapher who opened the client's sealed material is a thief with a motive. She heard her own voice flatten. I'd be the story, not you. Darius came on the line at 7 the next morning with the number. Prepaid handset, activated at a kiosk on Boulder Highway 5 months and 1 week earlier. Bought with cash. No camera coverage retained past 90 days. Savannah wrote the date on her paper and set it beside the date the Crown Wing filing had been stamped. Same week. She was at the front doors of the Phoenix Crown by 9, and this time nobody walked her anywhere. Darius met her at the elevator bank with a laminated badge on a green lanyard and handed it over without ceremony. Consultant of record, he said. Visual identity. She turned it over. Her name, the studio's name under it, spelled correctly, with the ampersand. Whose idea was the title? Yours. You just hadn't said it yet. Upstairs, the audit had been rebuilt into 2 long rows, and Sung Jae was standing at the far end of it, with his sleeves turned back once. He looked at her badge, and then at her. If you stop the wedding today, Savannah said, you lose them. Explain it. You cancel, the money goes quiet, the accounts close, the vendors get told a family disagreement, and everyone in this town nods, because everyone in this town has been told that before. She put her portfolio on the table. Right now, there are 11 contractors in Clark County who think they're building the most expensive wedding of the year, and every one of them has a file with a signature in it. Darius made a sound that was almost approval. So it keeps running, Sung-jae said. It runs exactly as scheduled. Flowers, arch, band, rooms, cars, everything. She unzipped the portfolio. And I walk into every single supplier as the client's consultant and ask to see their paperwork, and none of them refuses me, because refusing the client is how you lose the client. And if the person who built this is watching the vendors, then they see a calligrapher doing her job. She looked up, which is what they hired. He crossed the room and stood on the other side of the table, and for a moment, neither of them said anything, and the wall of screens changed a figure by itself. There's a cost, he said. Say it. You will be photographed under my arch, in my ballroom, with my name in the room. His jaw moved once. In 11 days, there will be 400 people here who will remember your face. I know what a room like that does to a woman like me. Then say no. I'm saying yes. She pulled the addendum Denise had drafted at 6:40 that morning and slid it across the paper. 2 lines. First, I inspect any vendor file connected to this event without asking permission twice. Second, nothing I letter, sketch, or design for this wedding ever becomes yours. Not the arch, not the seating cards, not one gold initial. He read it standing, the way he read everything. Then he signed it and gave her back the pen and asked what she needed first. A truck, Savannah said, and a man who can lift. Ridgeline Floral Design ran out of a converted freight bay off Losey Road with 3 walk-in coolers and a girl at the front counter who lit up at the badge. The owner came out wiping her hands and shook Savannah's hand hard. You're the paper? I'm the paper. Come see the peonies before they kill me. The cold room breathed on them, 400 stems in buckets, staged in a chilled sequence, and above them, a printed schedule, taped to the steel wall, with a phoenix at the top of the page. Savannah stepped up close to the paper and looked at the bird. Both wings down. Where'd you get the letterhead? Came with the order packet. The owner shrugged. They sent it all. Colors, crest, the whole style sheet. Nice packet. Wish all my clients did that. Can I see it? The packet was 30 pages in a black spiral. Savannah turned it under the light on the loading dock and found what she was looking for on page 4, a printed grid of the crest at 4 sizes, with a code in the corner of each block. PF2, PF2, PF2. And in the gutter of the page, faint, a printer's registration mark that had been struck through by hand with a ballpoint. She held it up to the sun. Hard downstroke. A pen driven into the paper hard enough to emboss the reverse. Who delivered this to you? Courier. Signature? Somewhere. The owner scratched her neck. You want me to dig? I want you to dig. The steel shed in North Las Vegas smelled of hot metal, and there were 2 men on scissor lifts when Savannah walked in under the badge. The ceremonial arch lay on its side across 4 sawhorses, 16 feet of welded core with the cladding half on, and it looked less like a wedding than like something being built to survive a storm. The fabricator was 60 and had a burn scar the shape of a comma on his forearm and did not want to talk until she asked about the tolerance on the joint. After that, he talked for 20 minutes. Nobody orders a core like this for flowers, he said. This is a rig. This holds a camera, a truss, a lighting bar. Somebody wanted this thing to still be standing in 100 years. Who specified it? Engineer's drawing came with the purchase order. He wiped his hands. You want a copy? I keep everything. My brother-in-law got sued once. He printed it while she watched. The purchase order was 2 pages. On page 2, at the bottom, someone had crossed out a delivery date and written a new one above it, in hard right-leaning capitals. Savannah stopped breathing for 1 second and then breathed normally on purpose. Can I have this? She said, and the envelope it came in? You can have my lunch if you want it. She was back at the Phoenix Crown at 4 with 3 vendor packets in her portfolio and her hands steady, and she went straight past the audit room and into the ballroom because the lighting crew had been booked for 4:30 and she had asked for the appointment herself. Ballroom A held 600. The chandeliers were down on their winches for cleaning and the floor was bare. The arch had been trucked over that afternoon. Cladding on, standing upright at the head of the room on a temporary base, and it was, she had to admit, beautiful. The lighting director gave her a headset she didn't put on. "We're setting the ceremony key," he said. "I need something under the arch with the finish on it. Paper, fabric, whatever." Savannah held up a single envelope. "That's 4 inches of gold leaf," he said. "I can't read 4 inches from the board." "Then I'll hold it." She walked up the aisle carpet, which wasn't down yet, on bare marble, and stood under the 16-foot arch with an envelope in both hands like a woman in a photograph. The first cue came up warm. "Too warm," she called. "The gold's going orange. It's not gold anymore, it's brass." They dropped the amber. The gold came back. "Now the paper's gray. Split the difference? Split it, and take the fill off my left, because at that angle the decal throws a shadow, and every guest in the first 6 rows is going to think the edge is torn." Somewhere behind the board, a man laughed. The lights cycled. She stood in the middle of them and turned the envelope slowly and called corrections, and the crew took every one of them, and for 11 minutes she was simply very good at her job in front of people who could tell. Then the room lights came up on the house side, and Sung-jae was standing at the back with his hands in his pockets. He had been there a while. She understood that immediately from the way the doorman had positioned himself. He came up the marble slowly, stopped at the foot of the arch. "That's where he stands," Savannah said. "I know. Somebody built it so you'd stand there for a photograph that ends up in a Seoul newspaper the following Monday. I know that too." She stepped down off the base, and the distance closed to less than she'd intended, and she held the envelope up between them like a small flat wall. "Your gold is a half-tone too cool under that key," she said. "Change the key." "Change the gold, the key's right." He almost smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him do anything with his mouth that wasn't control. The band rehearsal ran the next evening, and she had not planned to be there. She was there because the ballroom manager had called the consultant of record about the seating cards, and the seating cards depended on the table plan, and the table plan depended on where the 9-piece put its risers, and by the time all of that was settled, the 9-piece had set up and started to play. 480 empty chairs. 1 woman with a diagram. The bandleader tapped his stick on the rim. "We need the floor spacing on the first dance. 40 seconds is all I need. Anybody?" Nobody moved. Then a hand went up somewhere near the back, and someone said something in Korean, and the room did the small, terrible thing rooms do when the boss is present. Sung-jae walked out onto the floor. He looked at Savannah with the diagram in her hands. 40 seconds, he said. "For the room. I'm the stationary. You're the only person in this building who's measured that floor." She put the diagram down on a chair. The band came in on a slow 4. He took her right hand in his left, and it was formal, correct, the distance of a man who had been taught this at 12. Then his other hand found her waist and settled. It landed exactly where it had landed in the elevator. Neither of them acknowledged it. The 9-piece played. They moved 8 feet toward the arch and 8 feet back, and the bandleader called out a note about the riser, and the drummer answered him. "The floor's short," Savannah said, and her voice came out lower than usual. "By 4 feet. Then they move the risers." His thumb had not moved from where it was. She could feel her own pulse in her wrist against his palm, and there was nothing to be done about that. So she looked over his shoulder at the arch and counted the cladding seams instead. 40 seconds ended. He let go first, completely, both hands at once, and stepped back a full pace before she had to. "Thank you," he said, to the room, in 2 languages. Savannah picked up her diagram and went to the door and did not look back until she was in the corridor, and then she looked back through the glass for exactly as long as it took her to be certain that he had returned to the far end of the ballroom and was talking to Darius about something with numbers in it. She drove to the studio and worked until 2 in the morning and finished 41 envelopes. At 2:10, she cleared the long table completely. The light table went on. She laid out 3 sheets. Sheet 1, page 4 of her own contract from Vow and Crown, with Calvin's pencil note in the margin, the one he'd smeared with his thumb and not denied. 2.5 on final delivery. Confirm W/office. Sheet 2, the fabricator's purchase order, page 2, with the delivery date crossed out and rewritten. Sheet 3, the floral-style packet, page 4, with the registration mark struck through. She turned the light table up to full. Capitals, all three, right-leaning at the same angle, and she measured it with a protractor and wrote it down. 14 degrees. 14 degrees on all three. That was not enough. Slant could be copied. She looked at the downstrokes. On the pencil note, the vertical of the D in delivery had been driven so hard the graphite had polished. On the purchase order, in ballpoint, the same vertical had cut a groove she could feel with a fingertip on the reverse of the page. She turned the sheet over and ran the pad of her thumb across the back and felt the writing like braille. Same pressure, same release. A small flick at the bottom of every downstroke where the hand came off the paper too fast. The habit of a man who had been writing in a hurry for 19 years. And then the thing that closed it. Every capital R in all three documents had a leg that started inside the bowl instead of at the junction. A private ugliness. A tick he had probably been corrected for at 9 years old and had never lost. Savannah sat back on the stool. "You wrote on it," she said out loud, to nobody. "You didn't just carry it, you wrote on it." She got the master agreement out of the third packet. It was the caterer's copy, the one document she'd taken from a vendor without asking, folded inside the banquet course sheet, 40 pages of Crown Wing Holdings boilerplate that no florist and no welder had any business possessing. She had already read it once in the truck. She read it now under the light with the protractor in her hand. Page 29, Clause 14. Approved production materials shall be supplied under die reference PF. And there, in the middle of a typed line, a strikeout and a hand-inked correction. PF1 struck through. PF2 written above it in a 14-degree capital. Initialed in the margin, CR. Savannah put both hands flat on the light table. Somewhere behind her, the compressor in the refrigerator kicked on, and she jumped hard enough to knock the protractor to the floor. She called the black card at 2:50 in the morning. He answered on the first ring this time. "He changed the die," she said, "on the master contract, by hand, ink over type, initialed, and it's his hand, slant, pressure, the R, the flick at the bottom of the stroke. It's not a match, it's a fingerprint. Slower. The contract originally specified PF1. Somebody made a document run with the real die, or authorized one, and then Calvin Ross crossed it out and wrote in PF2, which is the fake." She was pacing now, phone in one hand, the sheet in the other. "The seal on your invitations isn't a mistake, and it isn't a forger who got the bird wrong. Somebody had the right die and deliberately switched to the wrong one." There was a long silence on the line. "Why?" Sung-jae said. "Because whatever PF1 sealed, they didn't want it looking like this." She stopped pacing. "They wanted a difference you can see if you know to look. And there are maybe 4 people alive who'd know to look. Say the rest of it. Somebody wants those two things to be tellable apart later." Her voice dropped. "That's not forgery, that's bookkeeping." She heard him move. "Where is he?" she said. "Where is Calvin?" "Get Denise," Sung-jae said. "Get her to your studio before you touch another page. I'll send nobody. You call her." Darius had the answer by 8. He laid it out on the audit table in the same flat voice he used for elevator logs. Vow and Crown Events LLC had filed a change of ownership with the Nevada Secretary of State at 4:41 that morning. Calvin Ross had assigned 100% of his membership interest to a holding entity registered in Wyoming 11 days earlier. "Wyoming doesn't publish members," Darius said. "Of course it doesn't. His house is empty, bed made, 2 suitcases gone, 3 still in the closet, cars in long-term parking at Harry Reid, level 4, and it's been there since yesterday afternoon." Savannah looked up. "You had 2 men on the street." "We had 2 men on the street." Darius's jaw set. "He went out through the back of his neighbor's yard, over a block wall, and got in a vehicle on the next street, which means somebody told him where my men were parked." Nobody said anything for a moment. "No flights under his name," Darius went on. "No car rentals. His mother's in Henderson, and she hasn't heard from him since Sunday, and she's not lying. I sat in her kitchen for an hour." "He didn't run," Savannah said. Both men looked at her. He assigned the agency at 4:41 in the morning, 19 years of business, and he signed it away in the dark, on the same night I told him I was giving his name up. She turned the purchase order around on the table. That's not a man running, that's a man being. Retired. Sung-jae had not sat down since she came in. He came to the table now. He's alive, he said. He wrote Clause 14, Savannah said. He's the only one who can say who told him to. That makes him worth more than the paper. To you and to them. To them he's worth more silent. To them he's worth more. Blamable. She tapped the initials in the margin. Look what he's holding. His handwriting is on the alteration. His agency took the wire. His courier delivered the packets. If this ends badly, there's a man who did all of it. And he no longer owns a company. And he no longer has an address. And when they find him, he will be the whole story. Darius exhaled slowly through his nose. They built him a coffin, he said, and let him climb in. So we find him first. With what? With his mother's kitchen, Savannah said, and 6 years of me knowing what he does when he's frightened. He doesn't go far. He goes low. Sung-jae looked at her for a moment longer than the sentence required. Darius, he said, the trace. Darius put a folder on the table and opened it, and did not slide it toward anyone, which was how Savannah knew before she read a line. 9 wires into Crown Wing Holdings, all under the reporting threshold, all through the same correspondent bank in Seoul. That much they'd had. What was new was the leg before that. Every one of them originates from the same funding source, Darius said. It took 4 days because it goes through a currency intermediary, then a securities settlement account, then a charitable transfer that's exempt from about 6 things it shouldn't be exempt from. Where does it stop? Sung-jae said. Darius turned the page around. Park Family Foundation, Discretionary Subaccount 4, Cultural Preservation and Family Observances. The room went very quiet. Savannah read it twice and then read the authorization line at the bottom, and then she read it a third time, because there was a scanned signature block reproduced there, small and gray. She had spent 11 years of her life looking at signatures. That's not a living hand, she said. Sung-jae's eyes came up. It's a scan. It's the same scan on every one of the 9 authorizations. Same pixel noise in the descender. Same broken edge on the second stroke. It's one image, pasted 9 times. She looked at him. Whose signature is that? He didn't answer for 4 full seconds. My father's, he said. Nobody moved. He's been dead 3 years, Darius said. 3 years and 4 months. Sung-jae put one hand flat on the folder, very carefully, the way a man puts a hand on something he intends not to break. The foundation charter requires a founder's authorization for any disbursement over $100,000 from a discretionary account. My father was the founder. There is no living founder. So somebody kept the signature, Savannah said. Somebody kept the signature. Who administers subaccount 4? Darius closed the folder. The president of the foundation, he said, sole signatory, sole authority to certify a founder's authorization as genuine. Savannah sat down slowly on the edge of the table. Not because it was a surprise, because it wasn't. She thought about a woman in the doorway of this room saying her surname once, slowly, and looking at her a second longer than the sentence needed, and she felt the back of her neck go cold in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It's not a rival, she said. It's not a Yoon, and it's not a shareholder, and it's not somebody in Seoul with a grudge and a bank. Sung-jae was looking at the window. It's someone who can walk into any room in this building, she said, and no one asks her why she's here. Say it, he said. You say it. She's your blood. He turned around. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, like a man who had lost something in the last 30 seconds. My aunt held the condolence book, he said. My aunt told Yoon Myung-ho in February that the foundation was handling the arrangements. My aunt appointed 6 of the 11 votes. He stopped. And my aunt is the only person who could certify my father's signature. That's still not proof. No. A scan and a subaccount and 6 votes is a story, Savannah said. 12 days from now, she stands up in front of 400 people and tells a better one. I need the thing that can't be argued with. Which is? PF1. She stood. Somewhere there is a real die and a real document sealed with it, and the day I put those two things on a table next to each other, it doesn't matter who owns the votes. Darius had already picked up his phone. Where do we look? Where every die in this country gets looked for. Savannah pulled the black notebook out of her portfolio and opened it to a page with 6 names on it. There are maybe 9 men in America who cut steel at that level. I know 6 of them. One's in Pasadena, one's in Portland, and there's an 81-year-old in Chicago who has kept the drawing of every die he ever cut since 1968. Since when? Sung-jae said. Something in his voice made her look up. 68, she said. He held her eyes and then looked away first, and she watched him do it, and she made a note in her head in the same handwriting she used for everything else. That was 3. She was on the sidewalk outside the Phoenix Crown at 11:40, with her phone in her hand and the Chicago number half-dialed when it rang by itself. Unknown. No prefix at all this time. She let it ring twice and stepped into the shade of the portico and answered without speaking. A woman's voice, Korean accent, careful English, absolutely unhurried. Miss Reed, the second 100 were due Friday. Savannah put her back against the column. Who is this? You will deliver 150 instead, on Thursday, to the ballroom operations desk. A pause the length of a breath. You have been working very hard. We have noticed. I don't take instructions from people who won't give a name. You have taken them for 2 weeks. Nothing sharpened in the voice. Nothing warmed. Do not let anyone else touch the paper, Miss Reed. Your mother was the same. She never let anyone else touch the paper either. The line went dead. Savannah stood in the shade with the phone against her ear for a long moment after there was nothing left in it. Then she turned around and walked back through the front doors of the Phoenix Crown, past the desk, past the men who no longer stopped her, and she was moving fast enough that the doorman had to catch the door. Her mother had been dead for 4 years, and somebody in this had known her. She got 11 steps into the lobby before Darius came off the wall to meet her. 22, she said. Now. He walked her past the public bank and used his own card in the service lift, and neither of them said anything for the length of the ride. She held the phone in front of her like it was still speaking. Sung-jae was standing when she came through the door. She put the phone on the table between the audit stacks and told him the whole call in one breath, the accent, the careful English, the 150 for Thursday, the ballroom operations table. Then she stopped. There's more, he said. She said my mother never let anyone touch the paper either. Something went out of the room. He put both hands flat on the table and leaned on them, and for 4 seconds the only sound was the air system. Say the exact words. She said them. He asked her to say them again, slower, and she did, and he closed his eyes on the last one. Look at me, she said. You've done that 3 times now. Read in ink, the folder with a name on it, 1968. She counted them on her fingers, 1, 2, 3, and held the hand up, 3. Sit down. No. She picked the phone back up. You're going to tell me, and then I'm going to decide whether I finish the day here. But not before I make a call I should have made 4 days ago. Darius set a landline handset on the table without being asked. She used her own phone. The Chicago number was still half-dialed in the keypad from the sidewalk. She finished it standing, facing the window, with her back to both of them. It rang 9 times. A man answered with a shop noise behind him and a voice like gravel run through a sieve. Vesley. Mr. Vesley, this is Savannah Reed. I buy dies. I bought a monogram from you in April. The Lindquist wedding. Brass with a decal-friendly shoulder. I remember the job. You paid in 7 days. A pause. Nobody pays in 7 days. I need a commission file. 28 years old. A phoenix. The shop noise stopped. She heard him move something heavy off something else. Who's Phoenix? Park. Who told you to call me? Nobody. There are 9 people in this country who cut steel like that, and you're the one who keeps the drawings. I keep everything since 68, he said. That doesn't mean I hand it to a telephone. Then I'll come to you. It's 5 hours. I know how long it is. He was quiet. Behind her, Sung-jae had not moved from the table. There's a mark on that bird, Vesley said finally. You tell me which wing, and I'll open the drawer before you land. She thought about the wax under the loop, the 4 cartons, the 4th medallion with its hairline scratch across the tail. She thought about 109 years of deeds with the right wing up. Right, she said. The old man exhaled into the receiver. Come to the shop, not the office. The alley door on Hubbard. I go to bed at 11, and I don't sleep anyway. She hung up and turned around. Book me a seat, she said. Coach is fine. I pay for it, and I invoice you at cost. Darius was already typing. Sungjae said, take him with you. No. Savannah. You want to know what the file says? So do I. And if he's standing behind me, an 81-year-old man decides I'm somebody's errand. She pulled the strap of the portfolio across her chest. Have the 150 ready to go out Thursday morning. I'll write through the night when I get back. You'll have been awake for 30 hours. I've done 40. She stopped at the door. The 3 times. When I land, you tell me. He said, when you land. The flight left at 2:40 and put her on the ground a little after 8 Chicago time, into a wind that came off the lake and up Ohio Street like it had somewhere to be. She took a cab with the portfolio on her knees. She had not eaten since the coffee at the Phoenix Crown, and she noticed that the way you notice a light left on in another room. Hubbard Street was warehouses with condominium windows punched into them. The alley door had a bell that had been painted over twice. She pressed it and heard a chain, and then a chair, and then a bolt. Harold Vesley was smaller than his voice. 81, cardigan over a shop apron, reading glasses pushed up into white hair, hands like a bundle of tools left in the rain. You're the calligrapher, he said. Savannah Reed. He looked at her a beat too long, and she was, by now, counting the beats people took over that name. Wipe your feet. The shop was 2 rooms. The front held the pantograph, the engraving benches, a wall of gravers in order of width. The back held the drawers, floor to ceiling, oak, 4 inches deep, brass card holders on every front, and a rolling ladder on a rail. On the bench under the lamp there was a brown envelope, string-tied, already out. I pulled it at 6, he said. Sit. She sat. He kept one hand flat on the envelope. First you tell me why, she told him. Not all of it. She gave him the shape. A wedding invoice to a company nobody could name. 1,200 inner cards sealed with a phoenix, both wings folded down, and a second die she could prove existed because of a scratch across the tail feathers on 1 carton in 4. Vesley listened with his jaw working. Both wings down, he said. Symmetrical. Clean cut. $4,000 of steel. Easy. It's not 4,000. He tapped the envelope. It's a copy. Copies are cheap. Cutting a thing the first time is what costs. He untied the string. Inside was a stiff card, a proof pull mounted on board, a folded release form, and a sheet of vellum in a glassine sleeve. He took out the card first. Commission number, hand-lettered in his own capitals. A date 28 years back, in March. A client name, Park Il-sung, and under it, on the line the card printed as Artist, Evelyn M. Reed. Savannah put her hands in her lap. You knew, she said. I knew when you said the right wing. He set the card down where she could reach it and didn't push it toward her. Your mother stood where you're sitting, not that chair. That one broke. She was in Chicago. She was in Chicago 4 days. The man brought her. He tapped the client line. He'd been to 2 cutters before me and neither would do what she drew, because what she drew is wrong. He slid the vellum out of the sleeve. It was pencil and ink, 11 inches, the bird in 3/4 rise. Wing, up. The left folded back along the body, and in the right wing, in the 3rd primary feather, the line broke. A clean gap of maybe a 1/40th of an inch, and then the feather resumed. That, Vesley said, is a mistake, if you're an idiot. Savannah leaned in until the lamp put a white bar across the vellum. There was a note in the margin, her mother's hand. She knew it the way you know a face across a station. The low-slung capitals, the E built in 3 strokes, the way the M leaned into its own second leg. Right wing, 3RD primary. Break is deliberate. It is the signature. If the break is absent, the seal is not mine. Do not correct. Under it, in a heavier pencil, The cutter's own hand, cut as drawn, confirmed W/artist 3X. 3 times, Savannah said. She called me twice after she left. Once from a payphone. Vesley sat down on the stool across from her and put his hands on his knees. I've cut 900 and some dies. 4 people ever asked me to put a flaw in one on purpose. 3 were banks. And her. And her. He nodded at the drawing. You know what she called it? No. A door with a bad hinge. Said anybody can copy a bird. Nobody copies a mistake, because a copyist's whole job is to fix things. He shrugged one shoulder. She was 30-something. She was right. Savannah made herself look at the proof pull. It was a wax impression on board. 28 years old. The red gone brown at the edges. Right wing up. 3rd primary broken. Under it, in Vesley's capitals, a die reference. PF1. She sat back. There's a PF2, she said. Not from me. You're sure? He got up, went to the drawers and pulled one at chest height without using the ladder, which told her how many times he'd pulled it. He came back with a ledger sheet. Parkle Song, 1 die, 1998, March. Delivered by hand. He turned the sheet. And this. Halfway down, in the same hand, 4 words and a rule ruled under them. Duplicate requested. No second cut. Somebody asked you for another one. Somebody asked, I said no. He put the ledger flat. You want the reason? Ask the woman who drew it, and you can't. That's all I'll say to a stranger in my shop at 9 at night. I'm not a stranger. You're the daughter of one, he almost smiled. That's worse. Daughters want the whole thing in one sitting. She looked at the drawing again, and then at the mounted proof, and something reorganized itself behind her ribs. Mr. Vesley, the seal on my cartons has both wings down. You said. But there's a break in it. She got the loop out of the portfolio, and the small envelope of wax fragments she'd lifted with tweezers, and folded into a glassine strip 4 days ago. She laid the strip under his lamp. 3rd primary. I've been reading it as damage. He bent over the loop for a long time. When he came up, his mouth had gone thin. Left wing, he said. Left wing. Somebody mirrored her. He said it the way another man would swear. They didn't miss the mark. They took it and they flipped it. Savannah stood up because her legs wanted her to. To copy the flaw, she said, you have to have seen the drawing. You have to have held it. There's one drawing. There's one. He put the vellum back in the sleeve with both hands. And it isn't in that envelope, sweetheart. That's my file copy, traced off hers on the light table with her standing over me. The original went home in her bag. The room did a slow quarter turn. Home, Savannah said. She wouldn't let it stay. I asked. Insurance, you know, we keep originals. He shook his head once. She said the original goes where she goes. Savannah's mouth had gone dry enough that she had to work it before she could talk. I need copies of everything in this envelope, certified, with your commission number and your signature, and a statement that you cut 1 die and refused a second. That's a notary and a Tuesday. That's tonight, and I'll pay your rate times 4. Vesley looked at her over the reading glasses. You'll pay my rate times 1, he said, and I'll do it because your mother argued with me for 3 hours about a gap the width of a hair, and I've been waiting 28 years for somebody to come in here and ask about it. He made her the copies on a machine older than her studio. He signed each page and dated it and pressed his own maker's chop into the corner, dry, no ink. He walked her out to the alley and stood in the cold in his cardigan until the cab came. Miss Reed. She turned with the door open. If they mirrored her, he said, they didn't do it to hide. Hiding is easy. You just cut a clean bird. He pulled the cardigan closed. They did it so there'd be 2 kinds of paper in the world, and only one of them would count. Somebody's been keeping score. She flew back on the 11:40 and slept 40 minutes of it with the certified pages inside her coat, and landed at Harry Reid at 1:15 in the morning, with the folder against her ribs, the way you carry a thing that has weight it shouldn't have. She went to the studio. She did not call. She wrote 150 inner envelopes between 2 and 9 in the morning. Her hand cramped twice. She soaked it in hot water at the sink, dried it, and kept going. Somewhere around the 90th envelope, she stopped hearing the pen and started hearing the old man in the cardigan saying, It isn't in that envelope, and she made a bad ascender on a Kim and threw the sheet out and took 30 seconds with her eyes shut before she started the next one. At 9:40, she carried the box through the front doors of the Phoenix Crown, past the portico, past the desk, down the corridor to the ballroom operations table with the green badge swinging on the lanyard. She set the 150 down in the exact center of the table. Then she found Darius. Where is he? 22. Bring the file on my mother. Darius went still, in a way she had not seen him go still. Ma'am, you pulled her. Public records, liens, storage, probate. That's what you do in the first hour. She held his eyes. I'm not asking you to admit anything. I'm asking you to bring the folder to the room, because he's going to tell me, and I want him telling me with the paper on the table. Darius looked at the floor for 1 second, which was all the answer she needed, and went to get it. Sung-jae was alone in the audit room when she came in. He had not shaved. The stacks had been squared and retabbed since Tuesday, and someone had put a fresh legal pad at her seat. She stayed on her feet. She emptied the portfolio onto the table, the certified sheets, the traced vellum copy, the proof pull of PF1, the ledger line with its ruled underscore, and last, laid on top, the mounted photograph of her mother's marginal note. Read that. He read it standing. Right wing, he said. Third primary. Deliberate, her signature. Her word, signature. Savannah put one finger on the glassine strip of wax fragments. Ours has the break in the left. Not missing. Moved. He looked at it for a long moment. They had the drawing, he said. Somebody had it long enough to trace it and reverse it. She took her hand back. One drawing exists. It left Chicago in her bag 28 years ago. Now say the 3 things. The door opened. Darius came in with a slim folder, put it on the table at Sung-jae's elbow, and left without being told to. Sung-jae looked at the folder. He left it closed. When my father died, he said, there were 11 storage rooms in the Seoul house and a vault under this building. I inventoried all of it myself 3 years and 4 months ago. He turned the folder square with the table edge. The vault has a flat file. Drawer 2 is the charter, the deeds, the headstone rubbing. Drawer 3 is one folder. It's got a proof of the phoenix in it and a name written on the tab in my father's hand. Say the name. E. Reed. She held on to the back of the chair in front of her. I read Reed in ink blind stamped on your box in the elevator, he said, before the card fell out, before I knew what the wedding was. And you said nothing. I said nothing. Then you sent 30 men out into a corridor for me and told them not to touch me, and I thought that was decency. It was decency, he said, and it was not only decency. The air system cycled. She heard herself breathing. Keep going. He turned the folder around and pushed it across. She opened it. 2 pages of county records, printed the night of the storm at 3:12 a.m. Evelyn M. Reed, deceased, probate case number. A residential address on a street Savannah had grown up on. A commercial lease. A lien filed in June against Unit 118, Ridgeview Self-Storage, Decatur Boulevard, in the name of Savannah A. Reed. Time-stamped 4 hours after she'd walked out of the building in the rain. You had this before I signed a single thing, she said. Yes. You had it before you sat there and let me dictate a clause about my archive. Yes. Say the rest of it. He put both hands on the table. I signed your contract without one change because it cost me nothing to sign it, he said. I wasn't going to buy your studio. I never wanted your studio. He met her eyes. I wanted what's in Unit 118. Savannah did not raise her voice. She found, in fact, that she couldn't. Say the whole sentence. There is one drawing of my family's seal that predates the fraud, and my father's folder says a Reed made it. If that drawing exists, it's in your mother's boxes. He said it evenly, all the way through, without softening a single word. I kept you close because you're the only person alive who can open them. She looked at the lien. The date, the stamp. Partly, she said. Partly. Which part? He held it 3 seconds too long. That's not a question I get to answer today. No, she said. It isn't. She closed the folder. She squared it with the table edge, exactly the way he had, and slid it back. You knew when I told you about the die cutters, she said. In the room, you knew when I said there'd be a file with a name on it. Yes. And you let me spend 4 days chasing it like it was mine to find. It is yours to find. It was mine to be told. Her voice cracked on the second word, and she let it, and then went on anyway. I have sat in 11 rooms in this building, and every single time I asked you a direct question, you answered it. Every time. That's why I stayed. She pressed her thumb hard into the crescent scar at the base of it. You just never let me know which question to ask. He came around the table. He stopped 4 feet away, which was farther than he had stood from her in 6 days. If I had told you the night of the storm, he said, you'd have gone to that unit alone at 4 in the morning. Yes. And whoever put a man in the gap by the pawnshop awning would have followed you there. Probably. Then I'd do it again. I know, she said. That's the part I can't get around. She lifted the lanyard over her head. The green cord caught in her hair, and she worked it loose without hurrying, and she laid the badge on the table with the photograph face up, the name of her mother's business spelled right, the ampersand and everything. The consultancy ends today, she said. Denise will send the hours through this morning, $250 an hour, invoiced weekly, payable in 7 days, exactly like it says. Savannah. I'm not finished. She took the black matte card out of the zippered pocket of the portfolio and set it beside the badge, squared. I'm triggering the handwritten clause on the vow and crown contract. The one Calvin initialed. Something illegal. I walk, I keep the first half. Denise files it at 10. That kills the second 42.5, so nobody in this building ever gets to say I stayed for the money. Nobody was going to say that. Somebody always says it. She put the certified pages back into the portfolio, one at a time, in order. The 150 are on the operations table. Counted, banded, gold intact. That's the last paper I owe anyone. And the 1,200? There are 859 envelopes I haven't written, and I'm not going to write them. You said stopping tells them I'm awake. You are awake. She pulled the strap over her head. So be awake without me. He looked at the badge and the card on the table, and he did not pick either of them up. The 4th carton, he said. Locked in my flat file. It stays locked, and it stays mine. The lawyer has the inventory and a photograph of the seal with the nick. If anything happens to that drawer, it happens to me, and Denise Whitfield goes to the district attorney the same afternoon. She said it without heat. That's not a threat. That's just where the paper is. I understand. I know you do. That's the only reason I'm saying it out loud. She got to the door. She had her hand on it. Miss Reed. She stopped, and she felt the change in the room, and it took her a second to place it. The name. Not the first one. Not since the corridor. 6 days ago. 28 years ago, my father drove to Chicago with a woman he never told anyone about, Sung-jae said, and came back with a bird that had a broken feather in it, and he put it on every deed he ever signed, and on his own grave. His hand was flat on the folder. I have been the head of this family for 3 years, and I found that out from you, in a shop I've never been to, through a telephone I didn't pay for. Then we both got the same news, she said. You got it in a chair. She opened the door. Darius was in the corridor with his hands loose at his sides. He straightened when he saw the empty lanyard cord marks on her collar and the badge gone. I'm walking out, she said, same as the first night. Darius glanced past her into the room. It was the shortest look she'd ever seen a man take, and it was a question, and it went to the man behind the table. She didn't turn around to see the answer. She heard it in the 2 words. Let her. The public elevator had a family of 4 in it, and a boy with a plastic sword who apologized to her twice. She rode down 22 floors with strangers and came out through the lobby, past the portico where the doorman had held the door for her at 11:40 the day before, and out onto the drive. Nobody followed her. She stood at the corner and made herself count to 60, because she wanted to know. No engine started, no graphite suit came out of the doors and stopped at the fountain and looked in her direction. No black sedan drifted to the curb 30 feet ahead, the way they do when they're pretending they were already going that way. The strip did what the strip does at 10 in the morning. Nothing. Loudly. Savannah walked 4 blocks because 4 blocks was the number she used now, and her hand shook on the 3rd one, and she let it, and she kept the portfolio against her ribs with the certified pages inside it and 11 inches of her mother's handwriting photographed and folded flat. She got into the first cab in the line at the Bellagio and closed the door. Where to? Her phone was at 9%. The bank had stopped calling. There was no message from a Las Vegas prefix, and no message from a number with no prefix at all, and that silence sat in her lap like something with a pulse. She thought about a woman 30-something years old, arguing for 3 hours about a gap the width of a hair. The original goes where she goes. Decatur, Savannah said. Ridgeview Self-Storage. It's past the wash, on the right. The driver pulled out. She hadn't said that address out loud in 4 years. The padlock on Unit 118 had rusted into one piece, and the manager cut it for her with bolt cutters he kept behind the counter for exactly this. He asked if she wanted him to stay. Savannah told him no and gave him $40 anyway. The roll door went up in a single sound she felt in her teeth. 9 boxes. 4 years of dust laid over them like felt. She sat down on the concrete floor in the emerald dress she had put on 2 mornings and 1 flight ago, and she started at the box nearest the door because that was the one her own handwriting was on. INK/studio/misc. Brushes. A jar of gum arabic gone amber. Her mother's ruling pen, the one with the bent tine. The second box was invoices. The third was fabric. The fourth box had no writing on it at all. It was the smallest one, taped twice, and the tape had been applied by someone who expected to open it again soon. Savannah slid a thumbnail under the seam. Inside, on top, a sheet of glassine. Under the glassine, vellum. 11 inches. A bird in 3/4 rise. Right wing lifted, left wing folded back, and in the third primary of the right wing, a break the width of a hair. She held it up to the strip light in the ceiling of the storage unit, and her hand shook so badly the vellum made a noise. 28 years, in a box, 4 miles from where she had been sleeping. Under the drawing were 9 wax proofs mounted on card, numbered in her mother's hand, and under the proofs was an envelope, sealed, addressed in the same hand to Park Il-sung, with a street in Seoul and a date 28 years old, and no stamp. Never mailed. Savannah looked at it for a long time. Then she opened it, because her mother was dead, and the man it was written to was dead, and there was nobody left in the world to ask. The letter was 2 pages. It began without a greeting. You asked me to draw 1 bird, and I drew you 1 bird. Your sister came to my room at the hotel on the 3rd night and asked me to draw a 2nd. Savannah put her hand flat on the concrete. She did not want a copy. She wanted a version. She said the family would need a seal for documents you would never be shown, and that a woman in my position should understand that money moves through paper and not through men. She offered me $9,000. She told me you had approved it. I asked her to put that in writing, and she laughed at me. I refused. I went back to Mr. Vesely the next morning and told him no second cut, ever, for anyone, including you. I have not told you this because you will ask me how I am certain it was her, and I am certain because she used the word bookkeeping. Nobody says bookkeeping about a wedding. Keep the break. It is the only part of the drawing that is mine. It was signed with her mother's full name, the way she signed contracts and never signed letters. Savannah went through the other 5 boxes on her knees because standing up felt like a decision she had not earned yet. Box 6 was tax records. Box 7 was Christmas. Box 8 had a photograph in a paper sleeve. Her mother, 30 and laughing, in a canvas apron with ink on the hem, holding an 11-inch sheet of vellum up at chest height in front of a hotel that had 4 floors and a hand-painted sign, and behind her, out of focus, half turned away from the camera, a young man in a bad suit who had not yet built anything else. On the back, in pencil, he kept the flaw, good. Savannah read it 3 times. Then she photographed every page with the last 4% of her phone battery, and when the phone died, she went to the manager's office and asked to use his copier, and he made her 31 copies for free because she was crying and he could not think of anything else to do with his hands. She was back on Decatur at 3 in the afternoon with a charged phone, a cardboard tube, and no plan for how to say it. Denise Whitfield said it for her. You're going to want a witness in the room when you hand that man a letter that calls his aunt a criminal. He's not going to be the problem. He's not the problem I'm managing. They went in through the front doors at 4:40, on day 7, 8 days out from the vote. Savannah wore no badge. The desk called up, and the desk was told to send her to 22, and the woman at the desk repeated it twice because she did not believe the first answer. Sung Jae was standing when the doors opened. The green lanyard was still on the table where she had left it. The black card was still beside it, squared. "I came back on my own," Savannah said. "I want that on the record before anything else." "It's on the record." She put the tube on the table and did not open it yet. "Your father wasn't the one who wanted a second die." "I know. You don't know. I know that I've been wrong about my family in one direction my whole life," he said. "Tell me which direction." She unrolled the vellum. He came around the table and stopped a full arm's length from it, and she understood that he was not going to touch it without being told he could. "You can hold it." He held it by the 2 top corners, the way you hold something that belongs to a museum. He found the break without being shown. Then he read the letter, standing, the way he read everything, and at the bottom of the second page he stopped and read the last 4 lines again, and his jaw moved once. "Bookkeeping," he said. "That's the word I used to you 6 days ago, and I got it from a woman I never met." He set the letter down and squared it against the drawing without meaning to. Then he took a folder off the credenza and put it in front of her. "Denise gets a copy of that before you sign anything," Savannah said. "Denise has had it since 8 this morning." She looked at Denise. Denise nodded once, and something in the room changed shape. It was 4 pages. It assigned to Savannah A. Reed, in perpetuity, all rights, title and interest in every mark, die, drawing, proof and archive created by Evelyn M. Reed for Park Ilsong or any park entity, including the Phoenix, including the founding charter impression, including the headstone rubbing. It stripped the park group of any license to reproduce the mark without her written permission, renewable annually, revocable by her at will. The last page was a release. Every claim the park group might ever assert against Reed & Inc., its archive, its client list, its dies, its unfinished work, waived, forever, unconditionally. "You're giving away your own crest," she said. "I'm returning it." "That's not the same sentence." "No," he said, "it isn't." He put the pen down on the folder and stepped back from the table. "Your lawyer wrote the revocation clause. I didn't ask for a single change." Savannah read all 4 pages twice. Denise had already initialed the margins. She signed the last one and slid it across, and he signed under her, and the room was very quiet. "Ask me the question you wouldn't answer," she said. He looked at her. "Which part?" "Which part?" "The part that isn't the archive." He held still. "I've had 4 people in 20 years who wanted nothing from me. 3 of them work for me. You spent 50 minutes on a floor with me and asked me for a jacket you gave back. That's not an answer." "It's the beginning of one." She crossed the 4 feet between them, because nobody else in the room was going to. "Ask," she said. "May I?" "Yes." She kissed him. His hand came to her waist in the same place it had landed twice already, and this time it stayed. And Denise Whitfield turned toward the window and studied the parking structure with enormous professional interest. Yoon Hae-rin came at 7 that night with a lawyer of her own and a memory stick. She put the stick on the table before she sat. 41 documents. My father's office scanned them in March. I asked his assistant for the audit trail as a daughter, and she gave it to me as a daughter. "And?" Savannah said. Document 19 was executed at 11:04 in the morning. Document 20 was executed at 11:04 in the morning. Hae-rin folded her hands. Document 20 is 46 pages long. Nobody said anything for a moment. I signed a page. They kept the signature and changed what was above it. "You'll testify to that," Denise said. "I'll testify to that in front of 11 board members, in front of my father, and in front of 400 people at a party I have already been fitted for a dress for." Hae-rin's chin came up half an inch. "I have been engaged for 5 months and I found out from a florist." Savannah slid the vellum toward her, and Hae-rin looked at the bird for a long moment. "Her name was Evelyn," Savannah said. "Mine was on the right side of the envelope," Hae-rin said. "Taller letters. You told me that." She almost smiled. It was the only part of this that anyone did honestly. Darius Cole found Calvin Ross on the morning of day 9, in a weekly rate motel off Boulder Highway, 400 yards from the kiosk that had sold a prepaid phone 5 months earlier in cash. He had gone down, exactly as Savannah said he would. She went alone into the room, which Darius argued about for 6 minutes and lost. Calvin was sitting on the end of the bed with his glasses in his hand, and there was a hard shell case on the floor between his feet that he had one shoe against. "You look bad," she said. "I've been paying for this room in cash, and I'm out of cash." "Calvin." "Don't." He put the glasses on. "Don't do the voice. I know what you came to do." Savannah pulled the chair out from the desk and sat, and she put 3 pages on the bed beside him. Page 4 of her own contract, page 2 of the Arch purchase order, page 29 of the master agreement, clause 14, PF1 struck out and PF2 written above it in 14-degree capitals, initialed CR. "You wrote every one of these." "I write everything. I've written everything for 19 years. That's why you're the one they picked." He stopped moving. "Your handwriting is on the die change. Your agency took the wire. Your courier carried the paper. Your company was transferred at 4:41 in the morning to a Wyoming shell that publishes nothing, which means when this opens up, there is one name on every single page, and it is not the name of anyone who has ever been to Seoul." She let that sit. "They built you a box, Calvin. You climbed in and pulled the lid." He took the glasses off again. His hands had ink on them, the same as they had every day of the 6 years she had known him. "They told me the couple wanted privacy," he said. "You never met a couple. I met a voice." His mouth worked. "A woman. Coriano. Polite. She paid on the day. Every time. No argument. And she said one thing at the start that I should have." He stopped. "She said the paper had to come from someone who would notice if it was wrong." Savannah went cold in the arms. "You gave her me." "I gave her the best hand in Nevada," Calvin said. "That's what I thought I was doing." Then she told me which die to reference, and I asked why we were changing a die number on a document nobody would ever read, and she said, his voice went flat, imitating, exact, "so that one day someone can tell the two apart." "And you wrote it anyway." "I wrote it anyway." He looked at the case between his feet. "And then 11 days ago, I got told to sign the agency over and go quiet. And a man I've never met told me where 2 of Mr. Park's people were parked, so I'd know how to leave. And I got in that car, and about a mile down the road, I understood that people who help you disappear are not helping you." Savannah nodded at the case. "What is that?" Calvin pushed it toward her with his foot. Inside, in cut foam, was a steel die, hand-cut, 2-inch face, a phoenix with both wings folded down, and in the third primary of the left wing, a break the width of a hair. Under it, in a plastic sleeve, was a bound ledger, every payment, every date, every routing reference, and a column of authorizations initialed by a hand that was not Calvin's. "The courier gave me the matrix to destroy on the 24th, he said, after the last delivery. I was supposed to melt it. Why didn't you?" Calvin Ross laughed once, and it was a terrible sound. "Because I've been in the paper business 19 years, Savannah. You don't destroy the plate." Day 25 arrived the way a scheduled thing arrives. The terrace room held 411 people. Park Mi-suk stood under the chandeliers and gloves and the family brooch, and said that the Park and Yoon houses had been one house in intention since before the death of her brother, and that intention was now going to be given a form. The 11 board members sat in the front 2 rows, 6 of them appointed by her. Yoon Myung-ho came up beside her with a tablet and a projector cable. The screen behind them filled with a signature page. 46 pages of memorandum, executed in March, 3 casinos voting stock pledged into an alliance trust, and the trust administered. The clause ran 9 lines long and put the word at the very end, by the president of the Park Family Foundation. "My daughter signed this in my office," Myung-ho said. "I witnessed it. It is authentic in every particular." Sung-jae, in black, at the side of the room, let him say it. "Swear to that," he said. Myung-ho turned. "I have said it." "Say it to the board, both of you. Say the document is genuine and the payments were authorized." Mi-suk did not blink. "Every disbursement was authorized by the founder's instruction and certified by me." "On the record," Sung-jae said. "Thank you." The service door at the back of the terrace room opened. Savannah Reed came in dark red satin, alone, carrying a cardboard tube and a hard-shell case, and 400 people turned to watch a woman nobody had introduced walk the length of the room. She set the tube on the projector table and asked the technician for the document camera, and because she had run the lighting test in this building 11 days earlier wearing a green lanyard, he gave it to her. The bird went up on the screen at 9 feet tall. "This is the original drawing of the Park Phoenix," she said. "Ink on vellum, March 28 years ago, commissioned by Park Il-sung, drawn by Evelyn M. Reed." She slid the wax proof of PF1 under the lens beside it. "Right wing raised. Third primary broken. The break is deliberate, and it is on every deed, the founding charter, and the founder's headstone." Then she put the invitation card up. "Left wing. Same break. Mirrored." Somebody in the third row said something in Korean and was told to be quiet. "The seal on that memorandum," Savannah said, "and the seal on 1,200 invitations, and the seal on the paperwork that moved 9 payments, came off a second die. There is only one drawing in the world. To mirror a flaw, you have to have seen it." She looked up. "The die is in this room." She opened the case and put the steel face down on the glass, and the false phoenix filled the wall, and beside it she laid the strip of glassine with the wax fragments and the certified ledger line from Chicago. "Duplicate requested. No second cut." The cutter refused. 28 years ago in Chicago, a woman came to my mother's hotel room and offered her $9,000 for a second version of this seal, for documents the founder would never be shown. She held up the letter. My mother wrote that down. She used one word for what the buyer called it. Park Mi-suk's gloved hand closed on the edge of the podium. "Bookkeeping," Savannah said. 411 people, and the loudest thing in the room was the projector fan. Yoon Hae-rin stood up in the second row. "I never consented to a marriage," she said, in Korean first, then in English. "I signed 41 documents in one afternoon in my father's office on a tablet. Document 19 and Document 20 carry the same timestamp to the minute. Document 20 is 46 pages." She turned so the board could see her face. "My signature was moved. My father did not know. He is a fool, not a forger." Myung-ho reached for her arm, and she stepped out of range without hurrying. Darius Cole brought Calvin Ross in through the same service door. Calvin looked at nobody. He put the ledger on the podium, opened to the tabbed page, and said his name and his company and the number of years. And then he said, "I was paid by a woman I only ever spoke to by phone. She gave me the die reference to change. She gave me the guest list 5 months ago. She told me who to hire." He raised his head. "I have her number, the dates, and the authorizations. The account they cleared through is Park Family Foundation Discretionary Subaccount 4. The forensic accountant Denise had put on retainer took 11 minutes at the microphone, and she was very boring, which was the point. 9 wires, all under the reporting threshold, all routed through one correspondent bank in Seoul, all landing in subaccount 4, all authorized above the $100,000 charter limit by an image file of the founder's signature, the identical image file, pixel for pixel, on all 9, with the same break in the second stroke. "The founder died 3 years and 4 months ago," she said. "The charter permits one person to certify his signature as genuine, the president of the foundation." The room made a sound like a door closing somewhere far away. Mi-suk took off one glove. It was the only thing she did. "He would have thanked me," she said. "He built 4 buildings and no wall behind them. I have spent 30 years being the person who counts, and not one of you ever asked who was counting." "You asked a woman to forge my father's crest," Sung-jae said. "I asked an illustrator for a working copy. She said no." He crossed to the podium. "She said no, 28 years ago, in a hotel room, to a family that could have ended her, and she wrote it down and never sent it. And you have spent 5 months building a wedding, to sit me under an arch, with a camera mount in the core, so that a photograph could be printed in Seoul on a Monday morning and used as consent." He looked at the board. "The vote is called on a memorandum that has been proven false in front of you. Vote." They voted where they sat, out loud, because Denise had already filed for the record. 11-0. The Park Family Foundation suspended its president within the hour and moved to remove her permanently at a meeting she was not invited to attend. Subaccount 4 was frozen at 9:52 that night, and the discretionary subaccounts 1 through 3 by Friday. The Nevada Attorney General's office took the ledger, the die, the certified file from Chicago, and Calvin Ross, who walked out between two people and did not look back at the room. Crownwing Holdings dissolved itself on paper and failed to dissolve itself in fact. The Wyoming shell that had swallowed Vow and Crown at 4:41 in the morning turned out to have one member of record, and the member of record was a foundation officer who had also opened a ballroom hold under two system approvals, entered a delivery ticket for a courier, and used the name Vance on it because it was the surname of a woman she had gone to school with. She had also stood in the gap between an awning post and a mailbox on Fremont at 3:04 in the morning and taken a photograph through a pane of glass, and she had done it on the instruction of a woman who had once bought a nail into that awning post so there would be somewhere to brace a lens. Darius Cole took the maintenance log for the East Elevator Bank to the investigators himself. Someone had opened the private car's service panel 11 days before the storm, and the badge that opened it belonged to nobody. Yoon Myung-ho lost the alliance vote, the trust, and the 11% of 3 casinos he had believed for 5 months were already his. He flew home the next morning. His daughter stayed 4 more days and did most of the talking to the investigators. The 859 unwritten envelopes were never written. At 11 that night, in a ballroom with 400 people still in it, Park Seung-jae stood next to Savannah Reed, in front of every camera in the building, and said one thing. "This woman is not my employee, not my consultant, and not my property. What she becomes in my life is hers to decide, and she will decide it after all of you go home." She accepted nothing. She thanked no one publicly. She walked out through the front doors, where people are photographed, carrying her mother's drawing in a tube under her arm. 2 days later, the story ran in Seoul, with the phoenix on the front page, the real one, right wing up, third primary broken, credited, in the caption, to Evelyn M. Reed, heraldic illustrator, 1998. Reed & Inc. reopened under her own name on the 1st of the following month, with the eviction file closed, the flat file paid off, and the 4th sealed carton unopened in the deep drawer where it had spent the whole story, because a closed box is evidence, and the state had asked her to keep it that way. She hired 2 people. She raised her rate. 4 months on a Tuesday, the rain came down Fremont hard enough to move trash in the gutter, and Savannah looked up from the light table because someone was standing on the other side of her glass wall and not knocking. She let him in. He had no car at the curb and no one behind him. He put a white presentation box on the long table, blind stamped, and she knew the stamp because it was hers. She opened it. Ivory paper, 800 grams, hand decal, gold leaf on the initials. No names, no date, no seal. "That's an empty invitation," she said. "It's a question." Savannah closed the lid and set her hand flat on top of it, and she let the rain fill 4 full seconds of the room. "Then you'll wait," she said, "at least as long as you kept me in that elevator. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been paid to stay silent about something your own hands had made? Have you ever discovered that the mark your mother left behind was the only proof anyone was lying? And when the truth finally landed in the room, did you let someone else speak it for you, or did you walk in and say it yourself? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, inheritance, and truth, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.